do it.
No, I'm
no,
not.
it's bad for Pat. You can do
Yeah,
it
not for
during
Pat.
the.
I mean, I would, to be clear, if I was spoiled on that game, I wouldn't be like angry with any of you. It's just I'm never going to play it, and it sounds like
that's the
something
thing,
that would
though.
be interesting.
It should be played.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
I've
why I
gone-
don't want to encounter the spoilers.
I've gone from like, I don't know. I am suddenly now like everybody needs to play this.
Everyone that I
That's-
know who plays it, even outside of this group,
That was the
They
first
play
year of this
V3.
podcast.
I'm so sorry.
look, we've made a lot of mistakes on this podcast. We put Pokemon on our top 10 last year.
Yep.
It's
I'm
true.
I'm so sorry.
We
it
did
took so
Horizon
long.
Zero
It's
Dawn
okay.
dirty.
Yeah.
Well, it's because I take partial blame for that. And also, Andre left and was like, hey, Horizon should probably be near the top. And then we were like, oh, let's put it around 8.
And then I finished it and was like, oh, I hate myself.
Yep.
Anyways,
As I sobbed softly to myself, I was like, we were wrong.
Yep.
Well, we
we
can
were
just
the
all
real
say
monsters.
that year one was
A mistake.
a mistake.
Well, since this year's
No,
going to be
not-
pretty
not a
light on
mistake.
games, I think
got
we'll have
the
time to
podcast out of year
relitigate
one.
2017.
we'll reorder and yeah. Anyways,
Yep. Reorder. Well, anybody who played some extra games, we can,
I mean,
anything
if and when we do this for 10 years,
make it on there.
if and when we do this for 10 years, we have to do an deliberations for the top 10 games of the year.
games of the years.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's an
And I
interesting
think
thought.
for that list, all of the top 10s would be automatically seeded, and then everyone would get to pick one game
Nope.
that was not a number one.
Nope. Because we didn't have Danganronpa on our top 10.
That's too bad. I guess it's going to have to get its props elsewhere.
Okay, let's do this stupid episode.
Get those props elsewhere is this episode.
Exactly. You're right.
2017, we were wrong. Apology tour.
Allison is so sorry that it took this long to play.
Allison's speaking in the third person because she's so
Yep.
sorry.
I'm so sorry that I've perverted the third person.
Allison Saigan is.
Oh, that
Allison
nice.
Saigan is.
Oh no.
Right the fuck here.
Beautiful.
Oh, I should have used that as your intro. Well,
Well,
I mean, we could just say that the podcast has begun and that's
No.
the intro.
Can't.
What do you mean, no?
That's
It's our podcast.
impossible. No.
it's can't be done.
Yep.
All right.
Sorry, I'm trying to be as snarky as your puppy. Let's do this.
Oh, it's fine.
Hello and welcome to episode 119 of Gaming Fix on this May 2nd, 2020. I'm your host, Andre Cole, aka your partner's favorite Final Fantasy. I'm joined today by Alex,
Hi, I'm so excited for today's episode.
Pat,
I am not the subject of today's episode excitement, and that's okay.
and Allison Saiganis. Allison Saiganis. Right the fuck here.
do you guys okay, so you guys know that experience of playing a piece of or enjoying a piece of media, right? And you realize midway while you're playing it, I don't know if I'll ever be the same.
Yes, I know that exact
course.
feeling with
That
that
was
exact
me.
piece of media.
That was me playing Danganronpa 3 last night.
Two
So-
words: Kingdom Hearts.
Oh no. Donald
To
Duck.
make it clear, the feeling, the response that all of you have when to my Kingdom Hearts transformation is absolutely what it feels like every time you talk about Danganronpa.
So in another 2 years, I'll finally play Kingdom Hearts. And
I'm
we'll
not
have
saying I
one
think all of you would like Kingdom Hearts as much. I mean, Andre, we know your feelings.
It used to be good.
Yeah, your incorrect feelings. Is it like the reverse of Kingdom Hearts, where when you start Danganronpa, it seems extraordinarily not interesting, and then it gets good?
No.
No, it is like
It's
Because
pretty
I did
consistent.
start
Good
one of
all
those
the way
games once
through.
somewhere and was like, "Nah, I don't like this writing or these people.
There's some characters that are actively bad. Also,
I don't think I gave it enough time, so that's not a that's not a real indictment of the. I'm excited to play them somewhere, so don't worry.
for what it's worth, this is going to be a really weird episode, dear listeners.
Yes. We are finally doing it. We've been talking about it for like at least a year. Whenever I
I
finish.
think since the start of the
It's been
podcast,
a
little.
long time. Okay.
Yeah.
Today we get to end a meme.
Yeah,
I went
so,
back.
yeah.
I went back and listened. Episode 3 is when this started. Like literally
specifically
over
the
2
spoiler
years.
Specifically,
cast
I
has
finally
been-
get to talk about my top 10 simulators of all time,
Yes,
and I'm very excited to have you all along for the ride.
The Stroker. That's number one. The end of this episode is going to feature a meaty Danganronpa spoiler cast.
Hell yes.
But before that, we'll have our usual stuff. We'll talk some games. We'll talk some news, and then we'll let Pat get out of here so he doesn't have to endure the spoilers for a game that he may or may not ever play.
Yeah, I definitely am gonna. It's so frustrating because I would like to play them on a handheld so bad, but they're also very cheap to get on Steam right now. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I
I'd be
might-
interested in seeing, because like they are supposed to come out on phones / tablets.
Yeah, I
so-
might try. I don't know. I might try the Steam streaming. I know that there's parts of them where you wouldn't necessarily want to stream them to a touch device. So I'm not saying I would play the whole game that way, but to at least like be able to play like narrative parts or something. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
There is a lot of moving around. I don't know how that would work unless you used a controller.
Yeah.
You can use, as my understanding, that you can use a virtual D-pad, which wouldn't feel super good, but in the non-action sequences, it should.
Yeah, it'd be functional. It just may not be the ideal, but
Yeah, we'll see.
But
Can you use a controller on the PC version?
Yeah.
No, that might solve my problem.
I
Anyway.
used controller for the entire game,
The main thing is to kind of
like all three.
I was inspired by Andre to purchase some exercise equipment that would be the perfect place to be playing
Yeah, a visual novel.
a visual novel on.
Yeah,
So
totally.
that's why I'm going to play Steins Gate finally on there and
Hell yeah.
and stuff. So
All right. Well, we'll get back to Danganronpa towards the end of the episode or midway or however long we end up talking about it. But for now, we got some non-visual novel games. Pat, you're kind of the one today. You are kind of the focus of today's episode, at least this.
you
first
are
half.
kind of playing a visual novel also. It's not
A little
exactly.
bit.
It's not quite as visual novel-y as Danganronpa, but it is a lot of scrolling through text.
Yes. But it's your turn first.
Yes. So I am sure everyone's very excited to hear about the game that I've brought. Who here likes mud?
Fuck yeah.
Like mud baths,
Just
mud.
mud.
Multi-user
Mud
dungeons.
client?
Who
Yeah.
likes God? Who likes snow deformation?
Yes.
Is that like snow halation?
No,
I do like snow halation.
it's not like snow halation at all. You could listen to snow halation while you deform snow.
Oh, you deformate?
While you snow halate while you deformate. No, so I in classic Pat fashion, I've been spending a lot of time with a game that is a hyper focused on one very specific thing, and that is driving large vehicles through the kind of situation where, like, if you're someone who like I drive a lot, and I used to drive a lot more when I lived in Michigan, and it's this is a game about the moment where in a normal car, as a normal person, you look down a road and you're like, that's not going to happen. And then you give up and you either go home or you take the long way around. The game that I've been playing is called Snow Runner. And it's from Saber Interactive, good friends at Saber Interactive. And no one here has played Spin Tires or Mud Runner, right?
Nope.
That's not okay.
I
So
have
the
played
original-
Motorstorm.
I did drive
very
a
different
four-wheel drive
experience.
truck.
Yeah. Very different than it's not a racing game at all. The Spin Tires, the original one I played a lot of, and that game, it was cool, but the problem with it is you didn't do anything. It was more like a sandbox. And this game has sandbox elements, but Spin Tires was very much, you could go and find cars, and you could find like, there were objectives in the world, but you had to go find them, and it was really challenging.
I've played all of 13 minutes of Spin Tires, so that's where we're
There
at.
you go. So these games are basically like off-road simulators, but not in the you're driving an ATV or a dirt bike and racing them. You spend most of your time driving like 5 to 10 miles an hour at the fastest. Most of the time you're going like 2 miles an hour through mud, and it's the kind of thing where you're like feathering the throttle. You see the tires spinning, and Spin Tires, and then like they catch for a second, and you get like 4 feet of traction, and you're like, oh, yes, and then they start just like spinning freely again, and then you have to like maneuver it a little bit to get a little bit more.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It's a
sounds like
nightmare
the
in
least
real
fun
life.
parts. Yeah, I was gonna say sounds like the least fun parts of driving in real life.
As someone who's done it a lot in real life, because I drove for 11 years in Michigan. You have that experience a lot, even when you're not off-roading in the winter over snow, which is kind of like brings us a little bit to SnowRunner, because Spin Tires got a sequel called Mud Runner, where I didn't play Mud Runner. There was controversy around it. I should have done the research before this episode, but I didn't think about it until now. I don't know the specifics of the controversy. My understanding is that they had to put out another game because they had to make money. And I don't know if it was publisher driven or if it was the studio themselves. And I think what happened was they kind of just took Spin Tires and put a new map on it. Not like new content. They like re-released pretty much the same content, but with a better UI and map structure. So it was easier to find the objectives. So people didn't like it very much, but it also like Spin Tires fans didn't like it, of course, because they were like being asked to pay $40 for a thing that had pretty minimal amounts of new content. That's my understanding. I could be totally wrong. It could have just been that it was not as good. But I remember it was controversial to Spin Tires players. But over time, it kind of built up an audience again. SnowRunner is a full sequel to Mud Runner, and as the name implies, adds more snowy environments. It still starts you out in part of the reason that I like it so much. It starts you out in rural Michigan, and while it's a little bit more mountainy than northern Michigan actually is, it's a pretty good approximation of what an area in rural Michigan would look like. And the idea is that like the area, the valley that you're in just flooded from this river in a huge storm. So it's like all the dirt roads suck and there's not a ton of paved roads, which is true of that region. And so you drive these big trucks around and do stuff with them.
So do you actually have objectives? Is it like,
Totally.
I'm gonna bring these sandbags to the river so we can stop the flooding kind of thing?
Totally. That's 100% the kind of stuff. It's a little more, even more interesting than that, but that's definitely the right track. There's a bunch of maps for starters. There's 3 regions in the game. Michigan's the first one. In the tutorial, they very quickly have you go to Alaska, which is where you experience snow for the first time. And then there's also a Siberia region. And each of the regions has multiple maps. Michigan has like 4, I think. Alaska, I think, has 4, and Siberia has 2, I want to say. And there's sort of it's one thing. This game has a lot of stuff in it. Like I've played, I think, probably like, I haven't been playing it as much as I've been playing Final Fantasy VII, but I've been playing. Usually I do it like early in the morning before work or before I go to bed. And it's been the game that I play whenever we're watching like streams or podcast. I'm listening to a podcast or whatever, because it's perfect for that, because there's zero narrative whatsoever, aside from the like very little setup of like, this is what's happening in this region. So the way it kind of starts, there's a bunch of different classes of truck. There's the scout trucks on one end, which is like pickup trucks and like a Hummer H2 and Chevy CK 1500. They're real vehicles. They're all licensed. And then you have like a range. There's highway trucks that are good at moving a lot of like a large quantity of resources and goods, but really over paved roads, which means there's not good in a lot of the environments. There's heavy trucks, which are pretty adaptable and can carry like massive cranes and stuff like that. And then there's off-road vehicles that are like sort of like the scout vehicles, but specifically designed for operating off-road. So there's like a bunch of vehicles. I think there's like 30 something of them, and they're all pretty unique. And typically the kind of flow is you get to this new region and then it's like an empty map, and there are like 100% just like fire watchtowers around the map that you drive to reveal the map.
Oh, is Delilah there?
Absolutely, just like, well, they
find a turtle.
The aesthetic is very Firewatch.
In the lake,
the mechanics are 100% the Ubisoft. Like you drive there, and they're often like not that hard to get to, but they are kind of off road, so you do have to do a little bit of work to get to them.
do I drive to the top of like a radio tower?
No, I wish.
Does your truck dive into like a hay bale?
You could make it. You could definitely just like gun it off of a hill that a tower is on and try to hit. There's a specific one in the Michigan map that I think you could almost make that happen.
Sick.
But you kind of reveal the map, and then it's sort of up to you with what you want to do. There'll be vehicles to go find around the map, as well as upgrades for vehicles. The upgrade system I like it a lot. It's pretty extensive, and it's a lot of like trade-offs. It's not actually just like you're going to make your truck better necessarily. There's a few of those, but it's things like, do you want to put, you can put a high saddle on this truck, which means it can carry heavy semi-trailers, but then it won't have a bed for you to put stuff in it directly. And for the scout vehicles, it's like you can raise the suspension on your truck, and then you can go through water easier, but you also don't go as fast on like paved roads. A lot of times it's like you can get an engine that's more powerful, but it also uses up more fuel. So on all that stuff is a consideration, because you actually use fuel, and you have to, on the early maps, it's not as hard, but eventually it gets to the point where it's like they're huge maps and there's one fueling station at the start of your job, and then you have to kind of make it work. So from there, after you've collected the vehicles and the upgrades, there's a bunch of tasks and contracts, and the tasks are kind of more one-off things, and then the contracts are more in-depth, multi-step kind of missions. And it's all done in this open world, so you're never like locked into any kind of you have to do this. There are timed ones that I haven't even started touching yet that seem very hard, where you're actually competing for like leaderboard spots based on how fast you can complete the objectives. That's not as interesting to me.
Does it surface like leaderboards with your friends and stuff in kind of like a Forza Horizon-y way?
I bet it probably does on consoles. It's on the Epic Game Store on PC, which is absolute trash. So I don't know that there's even the infrastructure built to do that on Epic. It's fine though, because I don't know a single other person that will play this game. Certainly not on PC.
That is fair.
But the thing that is interesting to talk about with this game, it kind of is what it is. I was talking a little bit to one Chris Edgerton about this on Twitter yesterday, and he was saying like it kind of looks like vehicle co-op, and to an extent, that's what it is. Like I had a moment yesterday where I was pulling a trailer of metal planks over a hill, and I had a heavy vehicle, and it was a pretty narrow road, and it had rocks on the road, and I was doing okay because the vehicle that I had is all-wheel drive, and it had a differential lock. So a differential lock is like it locks it so that the most tracked, like full torque is delivered to every wheel as it's spinning. So even if a lot of like general cars will like, oh, you have like a wheel that is you won't get the same torque on all of your wheels at once, but a differential lock ensures that it does, that you do.
I have to admit, I never thought when we started this podcast that we were going to be talking about diffs in cars.
So what's funny is I totally knew that we would, because I know who I am. So it has a differential lock, and so I'm like going up this hill. I have this trailer behind me, and it's going well, but then a rock gets lodged under the wheel of the trailer, and I'm in a situation where if I try to reverse and then try to go forward again, it's not going to be good because it's a pretty steep incline. And I also can't turn anywhere because it's a narrow road. So I have to figure out like, how am I going to deal with this rock that's lodged under the tire of this trailer? And what's so cool about it is that this isn't like a scripted thing. That pass just has rocks in it. And if I had paid better attention, I might have noticed it, and I could have maneuvered in such a way to not get it stuck. And we're not talking about like, this is a physics object. It's a rock that moves. It's not like I didn't see it and it got stuck. It's like probably even by driving over it with my truck, I kicked it down so that it got lodged under the trailer. And it's like a, just big enough rock to get stuck under a tire. And so what I ended up doing is I used my winch, because you have a winch on all your vehicles, and I was able to connect it to a tree. And I had to very carefully use the pull, because if I pulled too fast and too much, it would pull the tree down, which would then mean I would have no winch point. But other things I could have done, I could have put the parking brake on and gone and got another truck to pull it over the rock. And that's the kind of thing that, like, what's especially funny is after that, as I was driving the truck towards the destination, I just looked away for a second and looked back, and I had gone off the road and totally flipped the truck on its side. And then I had to go get another truck to pull it back down. Unfortunately, in doing that, it knocked my metal planks out of the trailer, which is hard to do. You have to basically completely flip the truck for that to happen. And because I don't have a vehicle with a crane yet, there was no way for me to recover the metal planks. So they're just kind of sitting there now. And I just had to start that whole thing over again, which was a little frustrating. There is no fast travel in the game, with the exception of you can recover to your garage. Each map has at least one garage. I think they all only have one garage, and they're big maps again. So you can recover to your garage, but then you lose all the stuff you're carrying. So it's not really a solution it's a solution if you're like, I finished my kitty is behind me and very excited about another kitty outside. If you finish, it's not a good way to like handle a problem in the middle of a contract, because your vehicle, like, you'll lose all of your stuff you're carrying. So if you're trying to carry two stacks of wooden planks across the map, and you flip your truck, if you can avoid it, you don't want to just recover it, because then you have to start the whole thing over again. The easier thing is to take another one of your vehicles out there and try to fix it.
Would you say this is the Dark Souls of driving sims?
Sure. I mean, in the sense that it requires a lot of patience and you have to be careful while you're doing it. And because of that, in a similar way to a game like Dark Souls, what's fun is as you start to get some level of mastery over the simulation, like now when I drive my pickup truck, which I've used quite a bit, and it's lifted, it has off-road tires on it, it's got a more powerful engine that I put in it, I kind of push it a little bit and am a little more risky with it. And it's fun because there's just enough stake where doing something like that, if I flip that truck on the way to a contract, it's like I can recover back to my garage. I didn't start it yet, and it's fine. But then it also has the flip side where it's like I have a huge truck with a huge trailer full of stuff, and I'm on a very narrow road, and I need to be really careful, or it's going to cost me like a half an hour of work that I did. And what's cool, and this is the sort of the Death Stranding angle on it. What's cool is a lot of the tasks are things that actually affect the world. So like last night I did one where there was a rock slide in the way of a road, and by delivering some tools to this rock slide, I was able to clear it. And I also got a bridge built by taking some wood to this place where they wanted to build a wooden bridge. So the actions that you do also improve the infrastructure of the environment. And so it becomes more, I don't want to say easier, because it's not like you do stuff and then like, oh, it takes the challenge away, but it opens up better routes where you can say, oh, well, maybe now I can handle it with my highway truck and get it done a little faster. So I think that aspect of it is really cool. And then the other part of the reason that I like it so much is it's like super niche, realistic to an extent. I don't want to oversell it in its realism. We're not talking like Microsoft Flight Simulator levels of mud driving simulation, but it's pretty good. It conveys all the stuff that happens when you actually do try to drive through mud, even if it's not quite 100% realistic. And the cool thing about the way that visually, it's very good at just saying, hey, we can't make this look perfect, but we're going to do our best. So like the mud deformation and snow deformation is extremely good. There's moments where the physics do weird things and there's like a triangle of mud sticking up and you're like, wow, that's not how that would look, but it's worth it because of how much it goes for it and how much it gets right. But all of this is sort of wrapped up in a game where the whole point is to clear maps of stuff in a sort of Far Cry or Assassin's Creed way, which I find very appealing anyway and very relaxing. That's like my equivalent of Animal Crossing in a way is to like methodically clear objectives from a map that are not necessarily.
How many bells you hauling? How many turnips you got in the back of that thing?
It is funny. The money in this game is pretty brutal. I have played for. Epic doesn't track time played, so I can't tell you. But I have played for like probably 6 or 7 hours, and I have 4 trucks, I think, and like 17% of Michigan cleared. And there's 3 regions that are all pretty similarly sized in terms of number of objectives. So if that tells you anything, this game has dozens and dozens of hours of content for sure. It does have multiplayer too. I don't know that I would get much out of the multiplayer because I assume it does, and from what I've seen, what it does is it's the kind of thing where instead of it being like, oh, I crashed my truck, I need to go get another truck, it's like, oh, I crashed my truck, can you go get another truck? And so I don't think I find that particularly compelling, but I'm sure there's fun stuff you could do with like racing and like if you kind of made your own rules. But I don't know. I think the multiplayer is not necessarily like where it's at. I would be interested to see if there are like raid style things where like you actually need 4 people, like specific contracts for multiplayer where you need 4 people to each take different trucks,
get a convoy
to achieve
going.
Different objectives. Yeah, that could be very cool. But I don't have a ton of drive to play the multiplayer. Get a
Gallarhorn truck.
It's like $40, I think. So it's not even a full priced game, and it's on consoles and Epic right now. And I don't know. I think it's pretty cool. It's beautiful too. Beyond just the mud and dirt simulations and snow simulations, like I'm able to crank it thanks to the 2070 Super that I got, and it ultra cranks. It actually does have occasional performance dips when I'm driving one of my big rigs because they like belch black cloud of smoke.
You're saying all the words I love right now.
It like belches a cloud of smoke when you hit the accelerator. and the smoke is so good at the highest settings, and like there's so much density to the particle effect and stuff that it actually sometimes I get a slight frame rate dip when I'm like hammering the accelerator to get a bunch of smoke to come out.
So
but,
when you're cranking it and blazing it,
exactly, yeah.
Rolling coal.
This game would be.
That's what they call you, Andre.
I will also say that I think this game would be extreme if you were someone who enjoyed just getting absolutely blazed. I wish that I enjoyed that more. Unfortunately, I do not. This would be a game that would fucking rip ass while super stoned.
Do not drive under the influence of
In real
marijuana.
life, absolutely not. But in SnowRunner,
So you're
It's-
saying
that would be a good time. I think.
so you're saying SnowRunner is better than Call of Duty?
No, I'm not saying that.
You can't say weed and can you say weed and SnowRunner? You can't say. weed
There's
in
no
Call of
chat.
Duty.
There's no text chat as far as I know in SnowRunner. So even in I don't know. Yeah. I'll check and see if there's a lot of visual customization you can do to the trucks, but there's no like stencil editor. So
No anime girls on your truck.
no, unfortunately not. But they should do that. They should add a weed leaf truck, and the problem is they're licensed trucks. So I think maybe
Hey,
if
the
they
Forza
officially
cars are
added-
licensed.
No, I know, but that's all community driven. If they added official skins that were like, here's a weed leaf for your Chevy, I don't know how Chevrolet would feel about that.
Well, what they need is the little, what is it, Calvin peeing on Ford or whatever.
Yes,
Yeah,
They
definitely.
need some of those
They have to
decals.
Yeah.
have one of those for every single brand.
And
Which I think that
Truck
actually,
nuts.
it's funny that
Yeah,
you
now
say
we're
that
talking.
because that gets to part of why I like this game, which is that in real life, the culture, at least not in America, I should say, this is not a global thing, but in America, the culture that surrounds heavy trucks and vehicles is mostly kind of not my thing. It's a lot
But
of
that's
like
Siberian truck culture. That's Pat's alley.
maybe, but either way, this game doesn't have any of that. This game is not like a yeehaw. Like it doesn't have, it has personality, but
How
it's
many gun
not
racks are on your truck?
zero.
Oh, no.
And
Is it even a truck then?
and when you are like, there are NPCs with voiceover that talk occasionally. They're not like modeled NPCs, but sometimes when you like go to a new region or whatever, there'll be a voiceover that talks, and it's very much like, we're glad you're here. The river overflowed and caused massive amounts of flooding. We need your help to get things back on track. It's not like shitty.
yeah, it sounds
so
cool. Like the game,
so it's
yeah.
because I like trucks. I think trucks are very cool. I just don't ever really want to hang out with the people around me who like trucks, because most of them are not people I would like.
I too like trucks, Pat.
I had a pickup Tacoma for many years, and then it got totaled, which
That
was
sucks.
unfortunate. I love that car.
Well,
But,
you could relive that fantasy by playing SnowRunner, and if you total your truck, which you can do, you can just hit the recover button and take it back to the thing.
I wish I could have just hit the recover button.
You know who else wishes they could have hit the recover button?
Tatsuya Nomura.
Instead, he missed and he hit the
Transition, though.
remake button. Brr, 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 brr. There was something, I guess it's from that Final Fantasy VII Ultimania book that came out in Japan. There's like all these quotes coming out of there.
Oh,
Sorry,
I know.
I haven't even heard of this.
Yeah,
No,
so
neither have I.
it came out around.
I hope
don't
they
know, it was right
translate that.
before. There have been a lot of like translations coming out. I don't know if like,
Yeah.
they're going to do a full like official translation though, but there's just been like people reading
So-
and saying stuff.
And my understanding is that the Ultimania books it's a series.
Possibly.
not-
I've just seen a lot of quotes coming out of this.
Yeah.
But basically, they're calling this the 5th part of the Final Fantasy VII compilation, which is Final Fantasy VII, Advent Children, Before Crisis, Crisis Core, and Dirge of Cerberus. So this is the 6th part, I guess. The remake is the 6th part. And yeah, there's.
For listeners at home, Allison looks thoroughly perplexed.
Then
I'm
there's
so confused.
there's some strong David Lynch energy in there from like Nomura, which is like, what was the quote, Pat? Do
The
you
quote's
remember?
like
Why is it called remake?
he
or-
and his response was, "You'll have to ask me in a few years." Ha 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 ha.
Oh
the
man.
laughs does not answer.
So Austin Walker retweeted it with the David Lynch laughs does not answer, but cross out David Lynch and put Nomura.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're a ways into Final Fantasy VII now.
The remake, yep. Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, yes, the remake. I am a ways into Final Fantasy VII, the original. I'm using that. Who needs Wii Fit when you've got an exercise bike and a JRPG?
Yeah.
Not me.
It's
So yeah,
that's how I played Persona 5.
No, yeah, that makes sense. About 1 hour at a time, because
The exercise bike that I got is recumbent, so you sit back in it, and it does move around pretty easily because it's only 60 pounds. So I could, in theory, slide it up to my desk, and I would need a controller because I'll be closer to the ground. But I
That's
could
pretty
use
awesome,
that.
actually.
it's
I'm pretty pumped
like,
about
honestly,
it, to
really
be
rad.
honest. We're both excited about it. My partner and I was like, okay, Andre has been talking about playing games with an exercise bike, and I really want an exercise bike. And then I went looking for them on the internet, and wow, is it hard to find exercise bikes right now, because a lot of other people have had the same idea.
Yep.
I bet.
So I could only, all of the folding ones that were like, oh, this would just fold up and go behind the coat rack, totally sold out everywhere. The earliest I
Yeah.
could get was like June, and I was kind of like, well, I want it now. But we agreed.
my bike and I want it. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm so glad you do that. That's weird. I do that all the time, and nobody ever knows what I'm talking about. Apparently,
Wentworth, baby.
apparently nobody else saw JG Wentworth ads when they were children. Based on Allison and Alex's blank stares, I'm guessing they
Yep.
definitely did not see
Yeah.
JG
No clue.
Wentworth ads.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
He was like an injury lawyer, and
No, it was it a lawyer thing, or was it like a payday advance loan thing?
I don't think it was a loan thing, but I could be wrong. Either way, it was about like injury claims at work, and it would be people
Oh.
like leaning out of their windows going like, it's my money and I want it now.
Structured settlement payments and annuities.
There you go. Anyway, I say
Yeah, Final Fantasy 7.
I say it's my blank all the time to my partner, and I want it now when we're playing games and she has no context. So
Oh,
I'm
'cause I
glad
was
that
gonna
you
say,
said
I was
that.
like, does she know what you're talking about?
No, she doesn't.
Okay.
Andre is the only
even
person
better.
I've ever met outside of people that I like grew up with that has ever understood what that means. Anyway, that tangent aside, it's hard to find exercise bikes, but we agreed to get one that like fits in one very specific part of the apartment that currently has pet stuff in it that can be moved more easily. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, Godspeed in that endeavor. But so where are you now in about Final Fantasy VII Remake?
So I think I'm in I think it's chapter 9. It might still be chapter 8. I am currently going through the highway that's all collapsed that is
Okay.
going through sector 6 to get to sector 7.
Yeah, so
with
you're-
Aerith. And these aren't
yeah.
spoilers. This is all like pretty
So
basic
you're heading back to Seventh Heaven and Tifa and Bear Avalanche people with
Mhm.
Aerith guiding you.
Yep.
All
Yep.
right.
Yep.
That's like 2 hours into the Final Fantasy VII and the
I
first
know,
game.
and I'm
But
like
Jesus
14
Christ.
hours into. I should say I've been doing every side thing.
Yeah.
I haven't beaten the Shiva fight,
Mhm.
but I've been doing every side thing. So
That
yeah.
Chadley guy, what a weirdo.
Chadley is there are 2 characters so far in this game that have had me almost on the floor when I met them. Chadley was one, but really just because of his name. He's a weird kid.
Awful
But Chadley is like, Chadley's the kind of name that I come up with to make fun of like
name.
bad white people names.
Yeah.
Like I was like,
Cadence
fucking
with like a
kidding me?
K-A-Y.
yeah, his name is Chadley.
I love it.
He's also a total fucking nerd child too.
Oh,
but-
love it.
But he's like an intern at Shinra, but he's like, but I'm trying to bring him down from the inside. That's why I need your battle data. Help me out.
Yeah. And Cloud's
So-
like, okay.
It's like, okay, Chadley. It's like, kill these monsters for me and I'll give you some materia. Like, what the
There's
fuck?
another
Okay.
character that
I'm
I won't.
like vaguely interested in like playing this game and meeting Chadley.
Oh yeah. There's another character who I won't spoil for people because it was genuinely a deeply hilarious moment. But there's a character that runs a shop that you encounter in the slums with Aerith.
Trying to.
It's a shop that for a while you're like, oh, this is going to be interesting when I can finally spend this currency I've been collecting.
Oh,
Then you get
right.
there,
Yes.
and I was just like,
yes.
you fucking kidding me? It's very funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but yeah, I don't know. I'm loving that game. I think it's really good. I have some like my biggest breaks with public opinion are one, everyone's been talking about how Cloud's a dick. I actually feel the opposite. I think Cloud's, I mean, he's kind of an edgelord, but like everyone around him is like makes fun of him and
The
treats
whole
him poorly.
time, well, the whole time he's just like, "Are you gonna pay me? Where's my money?" And like,
Yeah, but that's because he's
I mean, he's a
working.
mercenary. Yeah, it's
like and the whole time early, this is all very early stuff that you get a taste of even in the demo. Like Barrett's like moralizing about eco-terrorism, which I'm on his side. So don't get me wrong, I'm not like out here saying that I think that Barrett's wrong, but also like Cloud isn't, why does he care if Cloud has like a moral connection to what they're doing? Cloud's a mercenary, he should just want to get paid, and then they take so long to pay him.
oh yeah, it's
He has to do so much extra work. I'd be pissed if I was him too.
he gets paid for the extra work, but you know there is like the Jesse stuff and whatnot. Yeah, the Cloud is he's abrasive.
He's abrasive, but I'm also like, I
He's
get
very
it, man.
cold to everyone. Like he's not like a super friendly guy.
Yeah, but the
and, like,
only
trying-
person who's friendly to him is like the only people who are friendly to him are like Tifa and Aerith. I guess Jesse is
Biggs,
too.
Wedgie, Jesse, they're all
Biggs and Wedge are
Wedgie?
Biggs. Did I call him Wedgie? Biggs,
Yeah.
Wedge,
Yeah.
Jesse. They're all friendly to him, but he's just like,
they're friendly, but they're friendly in the sense that that you're friendly to like they definitely I don't know. I feel like they treat him like a service worker, which is fine.
I didn't
But-
get that at all.
Less so. The women in the game are a lot more compassionate and a lot more like friendly. But I don't know. The dudes are fine. They're cool dudes, but they're not like.
Every girl in this game is just so thirsty for Cloud's dick.
Yeah, that part of it is a little like.
It's not super far off from the original, though. It's just there's a
know,
lot more
I
of that
know.
content.
I'm sorry.
I just was.
I just need to point out that as you were saying that every girl is so compassionate in this game, what was happening in our Zoom call was the scene from original Final Fantasy VII
Oh
with
yeah,
with the
yeah.
sword, and like it was
Yeah.
as you were saying that the sword was going through, and I thought that was hysterical.
yeah. It is definitely capturing so like this is not. I'm not saying this as like a piece of praise for the game.
Yeah.
So don't take it that way, but definitely when I was a child and I played Final Fantasy VII, I was an old enough child to be interested in girls, and there was a degree of like, and this is again not a good thing, but there was a degree of like, who am I gonna pick? And
Well,
it's
the
like,
game
am I gonna-
also like plays with that. It has like a date, like it gives you
The
all
original?
these opportunities, to
yeah.
to build. A
Oh, I had the
relationship with
guide that was
people,
like,
and,
well, if you want to date Tifa, you got to do this stuff. If you want to date Aerith, you got to
Yeah.
do this stuff.
and if you want to date Barrett, you really got to do this stuff.
Yes. And I think it is kind of hilarious how it has the same thing in the remake. And it's a little weird because it doesn't feel like BioWare romance where it's like the characters certainly have agency, and all of the characters in this game are really well portrayed, in my opinion. So I'm not saying that they're like objectifying or anything, but it's an interesting, like, Jesse goes real hard, and then also there's like, you have it's like three kinds of flirtatious / romantic relationships that can happen, and it definitely leans very hard on all three of them in not very subtle ways. Like, you get the Jesse kind of like fling flirtation thing going on. You get the like longing looks at each other that Tifa and Cloud do, and then you get the like, oh, I've met someone new thing that with Aerith, and all of the. I say all this to say, I kind of just wish that the world of Final Fantasy was a world where everyone was just like, it's cool, whatever. We're actually just all in love with each other all the time, even though that's not really compatible. That's not really compatible with my real life feelings on relationships. But it's just that whole thing is one of the weird things that I'm like not struggling with, but does feel very forward in the game. Is like, Aerith keeps joking about a date, but technically, aren't I kind of in a relationship with Tifa at this point as Cloud? Because like the stuff they talk about and the looks they give each other,
at least from 7 or from Remake, like you get the impression that Cloud and Tifa haven't seen each other in a long ass time.
Yeah, like 5 years. I think
and there's also, there's that like tension and. Who knows, man?
It's not bad. I'm not saying. Well,
and you don't get any resolution to any of that stuff because of where, and because everything's it's gonna go to a new game. I'm gonna be fascinated to see how they make the change to like the next game,
especially because you do make decisions in dialogue here and there in the same way that you did in the original, that are like, oh, like, you know, Jesse at one point is like, oh, you should come over tomorrow night, and basically it's not like overly sexual. It's very much like, you should come over and I'll make dinner and we'll watch a movie, basically. And it doesn't feel like there's too much like subtext to that, and as Cloud you can say like, no problem. I like that the dialogue options were no promises and not a chance. And no promises is essentially yes.
It's all think about it, but there's a scene. It's when you're going to Jesse's family's house. You can, if you do really well in that scene, it can end with Jesse kissing you like on the cheek.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is, and then if you don't do like, if you have like less than 80% health or whatever, then it's like a different scene, which plays
I didn't
out.
get the kiss on the cheek, and I was very disappointed.
Well,
not so much for lacking the kiss on the cheek, more because there's a trophy associated with it.
Well, you can apparently
you can replay it after you finish the game,
but also you can also skip those parts, which is nice because they're kind of my least favorite part of the game. But
the motorcycle parts,
it's not great.
I actually thought it was fine. It was a nice break to the.
It's like a different thing. It's just I don't need to play those ever again.
Yeah. But in general, like the combat and stuff, I'm finding super engaging, really fun. It's just the right level of challenge. There's a lot of times when I'm just kind of like clearing stuff out, and then I'll have a moment where I'm like, oh shit, that was actually kind of a tough fight, and die. Not that that's happening a lot, but what's nice about the checkpointing is you can just like start back from the beginning of the fight, which I know is a pain in some of the later encounters, but at least like for the majority of them, it's pretty good. I've heard it's a pain, I should say.
There was only one time where I felt like the checkpointing was not great, but then I was able to adjust and take care of the fight, no problem. Yeah.
But and so much of it has to do with like selecting the right loadouts for your characters, which are very dynamic in that the materia system is still so good that there's times when it's like, well, now I need this character to do this, and you completely change the way that they work.
And not just the materia, but the weapon system in general.
Exactly. Yeah.
Each set of like each weapon kind of slots your party member into a specific like role. Like, oh, I'm equipping their magic weapon, so I'm going to put all my magic materia on them, or I'm equipping their like balanced one so they can do a little bit of both and stuff like that. So that's really cool.
You can have like a defensive setup even because there's like provoke skills and stuff. So what's great in some ways, it almost feels like a really good MMO where you can very quickly and easily swap between the characters. The only thing I wish is, and maybe you can, and I just haven't done a good enough job of looking into it, I wish you could get the AI to be a little more aggressive, because it uses an ATB system where you kind of like, as you fight, you gain action points to use on like abilities and spending on items and stuff like that. Oh. So the only thing you can do, you can attack and dodge and block, but you need ATB pips to do anything else. And sometimes, like right now, since I'm just with Aerith, I really like the way that they work together, because she has magic stuff right now. So I loaded her up with magic, and I loaded Cloud up with just like combat, non-ability focused, like purple materia. And it's fun because I get Cloud, who's like super combat focused, and then you can tell your party members to use abilities without actually controlling them directly. But I just wish I could tell Aerith, like, can you please attack faster so that you get more ATB, because you get the charge as you attack. Yeah.
The general combat prowess of your partners is not great.
It's fine in a way because they're actually pretty good at avoiding damage. That seems to be like the way they're tuned.
It seems more like the enemies are tuned to attack whoever you're controlling, is how I ended up feeling about it late in the game.
There is a concept of aggro. Like
there's like,
you can
like
definitely
provoke.
And you can also switch to a character and do a bunch of damage, and it will pull the enemies to them, like you're saying. But then if you switch to somebody else, they don't just like immediately turn. It's but as you do damage with that character, then you pull them off to you.
But the rate at which your allies do damage eventually just means that everyone's focused on you.
Right. They just attack so slowly, which is a little bit frustrating. And I wish that there was a way to tell them like, hey, I wish I had a little bit of gambit system in it, kind of, or, like a little bit of like,
or whatever the FF12 thing was. And
that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm not controlling you, can you please act more aggressive, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You don't need them to use abilities on their own, because again, you can just like hit R2 and it'll pause, and then you can not pause, but go super, 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 super slow-mo. And then you can switch between them and tell them to use their abilities, which works great. But it would be nice if I could just tell them like, hey, fight defensively, fight aggressively.
Yeah.
As just like, behavior settings. That's really my only issue with the combat, though. And it's not that hard to switch to one of them to get them up to like make them attack, and then they have the ATB. I just like playing certain characters more than other ones, so I wish that I could get them to be in a place like, I don't particularly enjoy playing as Aerith. I like using her abilities. I just don't like controlling her that much. So it would be cool if I could say, hey, you be aggressive, and then I'll still trigger your abilities, but it would be nice if you could get your ATB gauge yourself.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's great. Those summon fights are tough.
Yes. There's one you get for completing like all of Chadley's combat challenges, which I did not get to because I just didn't level up all the materia. I might go back to it eventually and do like some hard mode stuff and level up some more materia, but we'll see about that. So I don't know who that actually is, but it's not a huge spoiler to say like you fight summons to get to unlock them through Chadley. And all I have so far to do is the Shiva one. And it was like, I was like, wow, this is hard, but I'm getting there. I'm getting it. Then you get her down to like a third of her health, and she goes into fucking beast mode, and just all of her attacks kill you in a hit. I think by the time you're at, I had actually beaten Shiva and the second summon.
I think I could beat Shiva. Yeah. I just only tried it a few times, and then I forgot to do it again before I left that area. So when I see him again, I will knock it out. It is a lot. What's cool is the first time I tried it, I just didn't even know really what it was going to be. So I just went in without specifically setting up materia for it. And then that time was very hard. And then I went in again with fire stuff, and that makes it significantly easier. And that's something that I really like about the combat in general, is it's almost like Pokemon in the sense that enemies have weaknesses, and when you exploit those weaknesses, it's severe. It's not, you can have fights that you're like, holy crap, this is impossible, because you're not using the right skills against them. And that's cool. And I think that makes for a lot more like involved and dynamic combat than what I've gotten out of a lot of RPGs that I've played recently, which is nice.
Yeah, I think they did a great job of tuning the materia system to this new combat style. 100%. So.
What's also funny, and then we can move on, is the combat style of Final Fantasy VII Remake. The combat system is just good Kingdom Hearts.
It's you've got more control.
It's good Kingdom general, Hearts like, with control of your party members, basically. But it's super Kingdom Hearts. Like you push the X button to pull to go through a menu system. I mean, it slows down and stuff. Like, it's better for sure, much better. But it is very clear that Nomura went from a turn-based system to slowly developing a more action-oriented combat system, and it's been one long path through Crisis Core and the Kingdom Hearts games and all that stuff to this game. There's a clear through line of like mechanical development that took place. I think that this game, what I'm saying is, this game wouldn't have happened without Kingdom Hearts. That's what I'm saying.
You know what? This game might have happened sooner, according to Final Fantasy Ultimania, if not for Kingdom Hearts.
But it wouldn't have been as good.
Maybe. Who knows?
Because it probably would have had combat more like Kingdom Hearts 3. He needed to make Kingdom Hearts 3, which has, I'll even admit, pretty mediocre combat.
The distance between, like, they came out just over a year apart. Like, I'm not sure what the fuck happened there.
You could be right. Like, who knows? It's an arcane process.
Yeah.
I think it's...
Who knows?
The
different teams, but
it is also, I think we can pretty clearly answer the question of what remake means. It's like this is like a remake will, like Hollywood does now, where it's a remake and like also kind of acknowledges that the first one exists too. It's that part of this is not as complicated as I think it.
It's a Vacation from about 2015 or whatever.
Yeah, I don't remember if I said this on the podcast, but I definitely intended to. Where it seems kind of like the Star Trek remake, like the 2009 JJ.
100%, absolutely, yes. That 100% that. Yeah,
where it acknowledges the original in some ways. But
I mean, there's just I won't spoil anything, but there are like moments that Cloud has where you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
exactly. And not even related to Aerith. Like,
we were talking about this before. It's like, there are things in this game where to like really talk about it, like, do you spoil what happens in the original game for newcomers to talk about like a lot of these scenes and things that you get and information, or do you just go, yeah, you'll find out? Or, you know,
I think you can do both. Like, I think the conversations that we've had on this show and that you've brought, I've kind of stepped out of most of them, but I would assume are pretty conscious for that group of people who haven't played the original. But then I also think, like, we're talking about doing a spoiler cast with Jeff Davis and Chris Edgerton, and which I'm kind of trying to power through the game to be able to do that. And I think for that, we're going to say, hey, everything's on the table from every piece of Final Fantasy media. So
hey, if you want something like that, stick around for about 20 to 30 more minutes.
Yeah. So I mean, we talked a little bit about it before we started recording, and like my stance on spoilers like that is like, just it takes 2 seconds to say, hey, we're going to talk about spoilers, and then talk about spoilers.
But specifically with this game, like if you want to have like an in-depth conversation about it,
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
You know, how much of that do you go into, and like for like newcomers and old heads?
In a manner of speaking, if what you were talking about with the book and stuff, how this is part 6 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, it would be kind of like going into Star Wars Episode 9 having not seen any of the previous ones. Like, you do kind of need that context to fully understand the conversation.
I think it's more like going to see Star Wars Episode 1 without having seen any of the other ones, in a sense.
So just for the context more than the actual story?
Right, because
Kind of.
a lot of the stuff that happens in Episode 1 is so based, like it's so had to be something that came out after most people had seen what happens to those characters, you know?
Yeah. A lot of it feels like retconning in a way.
Right. But retconning in a more, and even more than Star Wars, in a more justifiable way, because it's like being honest with what it's doing. But I think what I would say to people who are new to the series is I wouldn't say go play Final Fantasy VII. If you have an exercise bike and you want to play a JRPG, it's one of the best ever. So like, by all means, I'm not saying that it's not a great game to play, but what I would say is it makes sense to maybe watch like a plot summary of what happens in that game. That sounds like it could be like, oh, you'll spoil it yourself, but I really think that it's from what I've played so far, and I haven't finished it, but it feels like I reread the plot summary of Final Fantasy VII after the stuff started to get a little weird in Remake, which is very early. I should be clear. That's not really a spoiler that it gets weird. But I read the plot summary and was like, yep, okay, this is the stuff I remember from when I played it those years ago. I'd say watch something if you can. I don't have any good videos on hand because reading it, I don't think really conveys the weight of how fucking wild that story is. But if you can find like a 40-minute, if you have some time and you can find like a 40-minute summary of what happens in Final Fantasy from a good source, like, I think it's worth it to know what happened going in. I don't know that I think you need to go and watch Advent Children and play Crisis Core and all that shit.
Certainly do. It's part of the compilation, Pat.
I like Advent Children, but that's a bad movie. So,
yep, yeah.
I think you could probably spare yourself and just brush up on your original FF7 lore. Not a lot happens in Advent Children either. It's kind of like a hour and a half long music video. So
it's so going back through like even just like the first 4-ish hours of Final Fantasy VII, which is basically almost the entirety of Remake. Probably about 5 hours of OG7 is the entirety of Remake. It's interesting what I don't remember, like, and it's all little things like, oh, this guy was here. And there's like a lot of stuff that I guess I just don't remember from that game. So I'm interested to see what else I find going through. I'm like, oh, I just did not register what any of this meant when I was younger and played this.
I don't think I did either, but rereading the plot summary, I was like, oh, that's what that was about. So yeah, it turns out Final Fantasy VII was a very complex story, more so even than most JRPGs. Like, let
me tell you about Final Fantasy VIII and time compression.
Yeah, I feel like 7 though is like almost more. I'm not saying it's better, but it's almost more esoteric.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Final Fantasy VIII is the GOAT, but Final Fantasy VII, it's all right.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy VI, baby.
I should.
Do you know I've never actually played Final Fantasy VI?
Me neither.
That's like
I played like
it's really good.
I really want to though, but
I am
exercise bike here and probably 3 more months of quarantine. I bet.
Yeah, I'm still planning on getting an Analog Pocket when those come out, and the GBA version of FF6 is supposed to be really good. So I'm planning to try to track down a copy of that, and play that when the Analog Pocket comes out.
Yeah, but no, that sounds like a good recommendation for watching and then playing Remake. Just because I'm really interested in playing Remake, but I don't know if I need to go necessarily play through the original. Like, I respect what the
Yeah.
original was to a lot of people, but since I don't have any real nostalgia for it, it might be kind of
Yeah.
a hard game too.
And it's also a big investment. The original.
That's what it is.
Right.
Like,
Yes. If
it's
it was
like
only if it was 40 hours,
It's more than 40 hours, right?
it's way more than 40 hours.
50 to 80 if you're a completionist.
I think
Well, I'll report back because
Yeah, I mean, I remember it. I played it for probably, I don't know, 200 or 300 hours at least.
Oh my
but that's because
God.
I was a kid and I thought it was fun to just
Right.
fly around the map. So,
there.
but it's a long game.
So I'm still finding there's a lot of what I think is just absolutely dog shit like level design. Just like in terms of being able like readability and like where the fuck am I supposed to go?
And
that's
that's
the 90s.
But I think
bigger-
Final
yeah, you
Fantasy
were-
VII is like especially egregious in this.
It
this area. Like there are areas that I got stuck on that I remember explicitly being stuck on when I was a kid, and now coming back, I'm stuck on those same spots, going, "What the fuck am I supposed to do?"
And I was actually inflating it in my mind a little bit. It is, if you go to How Long to Beat, it's like if you rush through the story, it's like 40 hours, and then 50-ish standard, and then 85 for if you're a completionist, which that's less of an investment than I was thinking, but it's still a lot of time. And so I would say I don't think you gain anything by going into the remake without any knowledge at all. So like I think knowing what happened in the original makes it more interesting. You could also play it and then go back and look at what happened in the original, but I certainly don't think that the intention is for new players to, oh God, my coffee machine's making a lot of noise. That I don't think the intention is for new players to go in totally blind and not know anything and then experience the story through the remake.
Right.
We'll have Chris Edgerton on when we do our spoiler cast, and he is a newcomer to the series. I don't know how much he knew going in, but
yeah, that'll be a good conversation. I think
so. We'll have some people with experience, someone currently experiencing, and someone with no experience.
And Jeff has a more intimate memory of what happened from like actually watching it. I mean, again, like I said, I just read the thing, but I hadn't. As I read it, I went, oh yeah, that, oh yeah, that, oh yeah, that. But the specific imagery is, I only have like a few memories of real moments in that game. I will say, I said last week on the podcast that I didn't have a lot of like emotional attachment to the characters, which was clearly not true. I thought that was the case. And then I got through, I don't know that I have a ton of emotional attachment to like Cloud and Barrett, but the first time you see Aerith, I like actually almost got choked up. So apparently my thought was that I didn't have a lot of emotional attachment to the characters. And then as I'm playing the game, it turns out that I do. So
the music kind of like did a little bit for that for me.
Kind of like
Totally.
what Jeff was talking about.
Yeah.
And I definitely co-sign that entire conversation now that I've heard more of it in context. There definitely have been moments where I've been like there's a boss fight fairly early, and then when the music kicks in for that, I was like, fuck yeah. And like had a blast with it. So yeah.
Cool.
Yep. All right. Well, that's Final Fantasy VII, original and remake. And now it's time for the news.
The news. This is earlier than we usually get to it.
I mean, because
for obvious reason. Well,
yeah,
it should be noted. Andre didn't ask what myself or Allison were playing because we have a lot to talk about.
We do.
You have both decided. Allison's game is Danganronpa V3, and Alex has decided that he will forego talking about any games this week so we can talk more about Danganronpa.
Absolutely.
Oh, I have one Danganronpa question.
Yes.
Before we move on,
should we do that after
let's
the
save
news?
it for after news.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
It's a super simple one.
Okay.
It's not even about the story.
Okay.
Can you play it with Japanese voiceover?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because having played and seen what little that I have, I don't super want to blast some of the dialogue through my apartment because I'm not sure that everyone that would hear it would appreciate it.
There is a certain chef character for whom I would recommend not blasting that through
oh my god.
So anyway, if I can blast that dialogue in Japanese, that's fine.
And there's also a V3 character where you're just kind of like, where I was playing it and I was
She's
like,
pretty rough.
yeah, and it's like you kind of get the connotations without knowing the language necessarily. So I definitely felt awkward about blasting that very loudly at my parents' house.
I will admit that character in particular, Allison. Actually, all of the characters are voiced very well in English. But
Okay.
yes, also, it's probably, if you don't want to bother others with that dialogue, play it in Japanese.
I certainly don't have a problem saying to my partner, "Hey, this game has a lot of fucked up stuff in it. So if you look over, just know." But if it's
Yeah.
like
But the
just
but
the
the
characters
blood's all in
yelling
pink,
it.
so that's okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's
anyways,
the only question about
with
Danganronpa.
someone who speaks both English and Japanese.
That's
Anyways, the news.
The news. All right. Starting off this week in our news section, we got, was it yesterday? Was it Friday? I
Yes.
believe so.
It was.
The Dorito Pope himself announced Jeff Keighley's Summer Fest in
Yep, we
partnership
got-
with IM 8-Bit and a bunch of game publishers. And
Yeah, the fact that it's IM 8-bit made me so happy.
yeah, it's so this is as Papa Keighley would tell it, he was sad to know there would be no E3 this year. There would be no Gamescom, no summer of announcements like we usually get.
Mhm.
So he took it upon himself and opened up his sack and said, "Hey game devs, hey game publishers, what do you got? Let's put it in the sack, and then this summer I'll fly over the houses of all the good little gamers and dump it out."
Yep.
And
For
so that
over
means
the course of 4 months.
yes, from May to August, finishing on August 24th, which is when like the Gamescom online stuff is going to happen. There's going to be periodic news drops coming, which is interesting.
News drops, demos.
Yeah, like it seems like Steam stuff is going to be part of this, right? Like,
Yep, seemed like it.
was that part of this thing? There's so much going on. It's funny because we had talked, I think in our chat, Sam had mentioned that he thinks once IGN like announced they were doing their like game, their news thing, the event, that everyone else should have just gotten out of the way. And then here comes Keighley on, nope, beat motherfuckers.
I would much rather watch Keighley's thing than IGN's thing, frankly. So
I would much rather watch Keighley's thing than modern E3.
yeah,
So
that too.
True.
what I think the Keighley thing, there's not a ton of info, like the schedule isn't out there. We don't know what it's really going to be like, but it seems like Keighley went, all right, like with E3 happening, when everyone is going to announce their stuff, like, maybe there's like some leaks or maybe someone announces things before, but generally you've got a press conference here, press conference here, press conference here.
Yep.
With E3, suddenly no one knows what's going on. And so Keighley's just like, all right, I'm going to help all of you get the optimal press cycle that you can. And so like, okay, you don't want to announce here because like we've got another thing going on and you're not going to want to compete with that because like I know when the Xbox is getting unveiled or, whenever Microsoft is doing their big event or whatever, because they've already unveiled the Xbox, but whatever. So with someone kind of managing that, I think it'll actually be like pretty positive for what's happening in terms of production and all that's like news cycles.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
interesting because like obviously he's done a really good job with the Game Awards. That's been
Yes.
his kind of main gig for the past 4 or 5 more
Mhm.
years. But
And Gamescom stuff and
Yeah,
E3
and-
Coliseum and
yeah. So like if I were to trust but if I was to put a name to someone I would trust to do this, it would probably be him more so
Yeah,
than anybody
he-
else.
he can put on a show, can put on a series of events. he knows the right people.
The
Mhm.
one thing that I wonder about this is like, and I haven't I didn't look I skimmed the story, but I haven't like, you all might be a little more tapped into what it is, but I feel like by dripping this stuff out over the course of a couple of months, I'm not going to get the information from the source. I'm just going to see a Polygon or Kotaku headline and go, oh, cool. there's something to be said for, I think, like the fun of watching the press conferences, and I'm sure there'll still be events like that peppered through it, but that's the one thing about this that, like, I think in general it's a better thing than E3, but I am kind of a little bummed that it's not like, hey, we're doing over a 4-day weekend, we're doing all of this stuff at once.
I can agree with that for sure.
Yeah, no, I understand. And I feel like as somebody that, you know, we all watch a fair number of the E3 conferences and presentations, like it's really fun for us, but I can totally see it being also like if you're a publisher and you really want to get the news out about your game, and then it's all like the news cycle is only caring about Keanu Reeves, which like understandable, but like I can see that if you're like trying to reach the most people, that this might be better, but it might not necessarily be better for, I don't know, the core group of people who are like watching every single E3 presentation.
It seems less entertaining, I guess.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I know some people, I myself haven't done it, but I know some people who have taken days off of work like explicitly to watch the E3 press conferences.
I did that when I was like when I was still in college, and I was working 40 hours, but I would I had weirder schedules because I worked in food service, but during E3 I would definitely like say like, hey, I would prefer to not work these 4 days. I'll work doubles or whatever the days prior. So I've kind of been there for sure.
Yeah. So they do say that the Summer Game Fest will have playable limited time demos and trials of select game content on Steam, Xbox, and other unspecified platforms. So there will be, playable things you can check out.
On the Ouya.
I think that's cool, but I think it's great that they do that. But I think given that I grew up in a era where there was just like demos of everything available through some magazine or another, it's like the demos that they put out are always pretty underwhelming to me. And it's maybe that just like goes to show how underwhelming E3 is if you're interested in playing stuff for entertainment purposes. But like, for example, like I'm pretty excited about Skatebird. And so when they put out the demo of that during the Game Awards, I think it was, I downloaded it and played it, and it seems like that game is going to be really fun when it comes out. But the demo was a pre-release in development demo. Like it was pretty rough in spots, and it was not polished, and it was missing features and stuff like that. So like I toyed around with it for 5 minutes and was like, this is going to be cool when it's done. And then but didn't really get anything out of, like, I got just as much out of watching trailers, I guess. And
which is why no one should go to E3.
Yeah, that's why I think it's really interesting that people were like, oh, we want the public in E3. We want to turn into a public event. When, like, I haven't been to E3. I've been to GDC and PAX East and played a lot of pre-release games, especially at GDC, more so than PAX East. Those are usually pretty polished. But, like, I did play some prototypey kind of pre-alpha games at GDC. And they tell you, like, hey, if you walk off of the golden path, this is going to crash. And like as a programmer, like that's kind of what you do for those.
Totally.
And the normal public, like people who are not in games press or programmers or whatever, they're not used to that level of unpolish. So that will be interesting if they put out any builds that are similar to that.
And I would expect that too. So it's not, I've never been one who's been like, got to go to E3 to play games. I would like to go to E3 type events to network, basically. That's the reason I'm interested.
Totally.
That's why you go to GDC.
But what I will say is, like, to your point, when you go to like PAX, like I'll never forget getting to play the Brutal Legend demo, for example. And like I got to play it right next to Tim Schafer, who was watching me play.
That's amazing.
That's also like, terrifying.
Holy shit.
Yeah, totally.
It was terrifying, but it was amazing.
I'd be like, I'm not good at game right now.
I was wearing a Coheed and Cambria shirt, and he was like, that's a cool shirt. And I was like, yeah, it's my favorite band. And he's like, oh, what bands? And I said, Coheed and Cambria. And he said, never heard of them. And I was like, yeah, I mean, their favorite band is Iron Maiden. So like, that's part of a blah, blah, blah. Cause I was trying to make conversation, and he was like, obviously Maiden rules. And then he signed a thing for me that said, thanks, Pat, Maiden rules. And
that's amazing.
And I had a very good time with the Brutal Legend demo.
I love that. Sorry. That's great.
That's such a nice story.
It is. Yeah. Tim Schafer is a wonderful human being. But I guess even removed from, obviously that was like a once in a lifetime thing that was special for other reasons. But even looking back to like a couple years ago when I played the Spider-Man demo at PAX, with obviously very nice people who worked on some part of the game, whether it was PR or whatever, were working the booth. But it was still really cool because it was this hyper polished thing that was designed as marketing material. So I think that, like, if I could play a Cyberpunk demo that is super polished vertical slice, I would be into that. I just don't think they're going to get stuff like that. I don't think that's going to be the kind of thing.
Yeah. All the stuff they're showing off for Cyberpunk is like, it's an hour-long demo, and that we've cut very precisely so we can show off all this like stuff.
And that's not to denigrate like indies whose games I'm excited about. I mean, there's plenty of indie developers who I'm sure will make games as good or better than stuff like Cyberpunk. So, but those are games that I'm not as concerned about playing a demo for, because I want to see the finished product, because I know that the demo is going to be sort of
compromised.
Yes.
I mean, they don't have the resources to make like a full vertical slice of a game.
Which is why it makes sense.
Also bonus that they don't have to crunch for E3 this year.
Yeah. All of that stuff combined means that I'm not crazy about downloading and playing a demo for a game that's either in early access now or something that is going to be, not super. I'd rather just like watch a trailer or watch a gameplay demo from a developer sort of talking about it while they play it.
But I think for the general, like more general public, I think getting hands-on with like a lot of indie stuff, which is probably what this will be, because that was kind of what the Game Awards stuff was on Steam.
Yeah.
If like you can get that in front of, like, if that's got like a big marquee spot on the Xbox store, like, or on like the PlayStation store, it's like, hey, it's summer of games, try out these things. Also, that could be pretty cool.
Something that I find interesting, a perspective I haven't really been seeing much of, is like, we're all ostensibly adults. I would be like, this is kind of happening over summer break for a lot of students. I would love to be a student during this kind of thing.
Totally.
Like it would be awesome. Like I would love to be 14 and getting this kind of like
new
content.
That's for sure.
Like that's awesome.
Right. And it's like, oh, I'm 14. We're all stuck inside. Can't leave the house. But here's all these games I can try. And that could be really interesting in kind of fostering a love of indie games that people might not necessarily pick up if they don't have the disposable income or anything, because if you're going to get one game for your birthday, you're probably, like, if you're a kid, you're probably going to want to go for something that has perceived value rather than an indie title. But
I hope it does end up being a lot of indies, like we were talking about with IOX a couple weeks ago, like just getting exposure for studios and games that otherwise wouldn't get the limelight ever. So being able to surface that kind of stuff, awesome. So, and
I hope that all this works in that way. I worry that if like a coworker of mine were to have downloaded that Skatebird demo, which was pretty rough, and played around with it for a half hour, they would have gone, oh, this game sucks, and then never think about it again.
It's a fine line for sure.
So
totally fair. Yeah.
The other thing that I was just thinking about was I wonder if, since there is definitely a financial barrier to entry for E3, I wonder if this might be kind of level the playing field a little bit, especially with indies.
I hope so.
Just because, like, to get your game on a big presentation stage, you probably have to have either have to have like the finances to pull that off, or you have to have a publisher really gunning for you. But this could allow for some kind of scrappy indies to get some notice, which I think is exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. Well, okay, I'm gonna force us to move on because we talked about that for way longer than I was expecting. And this
For interesting subject, so
yeah,
but we'll
totally.
probably continue to talk about it as it's ongoing too.
Yeah.
Also, as our next news story is a bit of gaming news coming out in May. I don't know if I don't think this is technically part of the Summer Game Fest, but Xbox Series X gameplay coming on May 7th via Inside Xbox live from Phil Spencer's house.
Is it actually live from his house?
No, I don't know.
Okay, I hope so. That'd be fucking awesome.
Does Major Nelson still do stuff?
Yeah, he does stuff.
Okay.
He does stuff specifically for Inside Xbox. I think.
Yeah, I haven't
Is
seen
his name Major Nelson?
No, it's
Or,
Larry.
Larry. Okay, I've never. Is that just his gamer tags, Major Nelson?
Yes.
I don't understand. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
that'd be cool.
Xbox Series X gameplay will debut on the next episode of Inside Xbox on May 7th at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific.
Yep.
It's gonna be interesting what that looks like.
Seems like one of the games will be a game we'll be talking about later in this news section.
Mhm.
Yes, and they say the majority will be third-party publishers
Cool.
and developers.
Not surprising.
Yeah, that is not surprising.
Although I mean to play Gears Tactics soon. That sounds like it's real good. So,
Yeah, it seems like an XCOM.
but in some ways, maybe better than XCOM.
The XCOM.
Yeah.
So that'll be something to look forward to in the coming week, so we can finally see. Hey, do games look better on the Xbox Series
I think
X?
it's going to be really interesting to see, in part because, like, so much of the like resolution conversation, so much of the like pro upgrades to the current generation of consoles was very hard to convey with trailers because you really need to see it running on the screen that it's playing on, so it'll be interesting to see how much the Series X and the PlayStation 5 gameplay when it starts to come out will work, like, because my computer's a 1080p monitor. I don't have a 4K monitor. I'm not going to watch this stuff on a 4K TV. So it'll be interesting to see how.
And then even then you've got
much better it
bitrate and
looks.
Stuff in the way.
Exactly.
of-
Yeah. Artifacting and latency and so it'll be interesting to see. I'm excited.
Like, do you think they do? Okay, here's what it looks like on the Xbox One X, and here's what it looks like on the Series X.
I would hope that the jump is big enough that isn't relevant. Like, I know all these games are going to run on the Series X or on the One X, but like if you look at Assassin's Creed 4,
well, third-party games probably, but they haven't said third-party games.
There's been a few third-party games where they've said that, but if you look at like Assassin's Creed 4 on the PS3 to the PS4, if you put them side by side, it's like you don't even need to put them side by side, because if you just show someone the PS4 version, they're going to go, oh shit, that's so much better than anything I've seen before. So I'm hoping that that's what the jump is like here.
I think a lot of the stuff they're promising with this generation is stuff you can't necessarily see.
Totally. That's why I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah, storage and stuff, like storage speed and whatever. Which
is also maybe why it makes sense to show it on an Inside Xbox instead of saying we're doing a special presentation this Friday at 8 p.m. kind of thing.
Well, but it's also like they've been kind of dripping out things like, here's the box, here's the controller, here's the specs. And so they've been kind of doing everything that doesn't need to be like a video.
Yeah. It certainly seems kind of
box
muted.
Reveal was it's a very different approach even before things got weird with COVID-19.
Yep.
So yeah, let's look forward to that. We'll have more to say about that next week. More news. We've got Serena and Venus Williams, Seal, and more to participate in a $1 million Mario tennis tournament.
I love this because playing Mario Tennis is nothing like playing real tennis at all, which means that, and so many of these celebrities playing don't play video games. So it actually is a totally level playing field.
Well, Gigi Hadid is going to be playing doubles in this. And as everyone knows from her Instagram, she's an avid Switch player. But I'm
sure that there's going to be some. I mean, Steve Aoki, I think, plays video games to some extent. So, it'll be interesting.
This is going to be an interesting thing, I guess. Participants will play from their homes, will partner it up in their matches. Everyone will get $25,000 to donate to a charity of their choice, with the winner receiving an additional $1 million to donate. So
it kind of leans into that thing that like it's funny that aside from motorsports, there is no way to translate, like none of the sports video games actually translate to like the real life sport at all.
Hey, Wii tennis, baby. What they should be doing.
So like if you play like iRacing with a full sim rig, it's the best driver is going to win. The person who can drive the cars the best will win. But with these games, it's just totally different. And so it's funny. There's been a lot of this stuff from like baseball players playing the show and football players playing Madden and stuff. I think it's fun.
All right. Our next news story. Fortnite is getting a party royale mode so you can put your guns down.
Yeah,
seems like someone found, like data mined, a new map, and there's going to be some activities where you don't fight, you don't kill people, you just like you party. I don't know.
I think it would be fun if this also allowed you to contribute to your battle pass. Like
how?
I don't know, but that's a big thing. My friends and I like card games a lot, and we've been playing Magic Arena and a lot of Legends of Runeterra, which I didn't check in on, but Legends of Runeterra is very good and out now, and it's
we can talk about that in like 2 minutes.
Oh yeah, that's right. I didn't even look at the next news story. But like we don't ever do matches against each other because you don't get anything for it. So like those games are so focused on progression and leveling up your stuff and getting new stuff that playing with friends in like a casual mode where you don't get stuff feels like a waste of time. And it would be cool if Epic was like, hey, time spent in party royale mode, you just get like X amount of experience points per minute. And sure, people could farm that and exploit it, but who cares? They're still buying your battle pass. So like, who gives a shit if they level it up faster?
Yeah, I don't care about any of that stuff. I think it's really interesting in like the VR chat kind of way. Like,
sure.
It's like getting people to hang out and chat and like share stories. I don't know if you've seen like the VR chat documentaries of like people opening up about like personal experiences they've gone through and like that kind of stuff. Fortnite is such a big platform. I would love to see the kind of, the actual social interactions that come out of it.
And I guess I don't care anything about any of that because I'll just get on Discord with people. Like, so if it's just like a virtual chat room, I don't really give a shit. So I think it's interesting that there's those two spheres though. And I wonder if there's a way they can combine those things together, because I might find investment in the social aspect, not for Fortnite specifically, because I don't care about Fortnite's battle pass, but if there's like some incentive for people who are focused on the progression and competitive play to come into that space and communicate, that would be really cool. And it might foster some of that like social interaction.
Yeah, it would be neat if you could turn that into like, all right, let's make a party in the social area, and then this will be where we hang out when we're queuing. And like if someone dies, rather than spectate, we just come back to the party area, and then when everybody's back, we start our queue again. Like that could be neat. But I don't know if that's 100%. Actually, I doubt that's what they're going to do with it.
It's according to their comment to Polygon, Party Royale is a new experimental and evolving space. Leave your weapons and mats behind.
Yep.
So, and I think kids will probably super love it. That's another thing though, is like if it's a space for kids to hang out and be social, that's awesome. Doesn't matter if I care about the social interaction, if it means a bunch of kids get to like hang out
playground.
None of us care about Roblox, but that thing is enormous.
Yeah, exactly.
Monkey bars after school. All right. So next news story, Legend of Runeterra, the League of Legends card game, exits beta and hits 1.0, releasing on mobile as well.
It's good. Yep. Their mobile client is better than the Teamfight Tactics mobile client. It's still good. Not as good as like Hearthstone's mobile client, but it is what it is. It looks really nice.
They added a bunch of new cards, right?
Yeah, 120 new cards. And I need to reiterate on that thing, like they are smart about how they're like they and Magic Arena have gone two ways in how they are monetizing. Magic Arena feels like it has very fair random pack stuff, but it's still random. Runeterra, I looked last night and I think I've spent $25 on that game. It lets you go back and look at your purchases, and I think that's the amount of money I've spent. 20 of that was spent on cosmetics. So I've only spent like $5 to get stuff, and I've leveled through the progression of one of the regions, and I have almost a full play set of all the cards for that region. So like if you play it a bunch, you can get everything pretty easily. And for this expansion, the cards, they added a new region of progression, which the regions are just like battle passes that you don't pay for. There's no like paid track on them. They're like, you level up along a path, but you can only level one of them at a time. And they added a new region with Bilgewater for this release. Most of the new cards are for Bilgewater. And then they added a few new cards for each other region. And they added like 5 more levels to the progression of each region and a Bilgewater region. So you can just play a bunch and get all the cards pretty much. It's really cool. And then you buy specific cards in that game that you want. So if there's like gaps in your collection, you can spend $5 and like fill it out. So it's smart. Very good.
All right. Next news story. The official release. This is kind of a twofer. Official release dates for The Last of Us 2 and Ghost of Tsushima have been set and moved, respectively. And partially, this was announced, it seems, because there was a major Last of Us 2 leak. So first, those new dates, Last of Us 2 on June 19th, which is right around when Ghost of Tsushima was set to come out, right? Somewhere around there.
Ish, yeah.
In June. And now Ghost of Tsushima will come out July 17th.
Yeah, I don't know if it is actually in response to that leak. It seems like it.
It seems like they were like, we have to put the game out and we've only got so much. It was so fast that like they must be in production on discs and stuff, because like if the game is done, like they can just kind of, if it's gone gold or whatever at this point, I assume they could do that. But yeah, this is there. So the leak, there was someone had access to the game and uploaded a bunch of clips of gameplay or story stuff, mostly story stuff, to YouTube and Reddit, and spoiled major parts of that game.
Yeah,
like significant portions.
And there was a lot of like discourse early on, and I'm not even going to get into my feelings on it because they would not be popular. But there was a lot of discourse early on about like, oh, it's a disgruntled employee mad at Naughty Dog, and like
speculation.
We all, not necessarily everyone in here, because I don't remember what anyone in here was saying, but I know I personally, along with a lot of major figures, needed to kind of pump the brakes a little bit on that, because it sounds like that's not what happened at all.
My whole thought on this was, you know they're going to find you.
Yeah.
Like they're going to find you. They're going to know who did it. They're going to fucking sue you out the ass.
Yeah. And like, what do you gain for it? Like just a momentary, like, I did that. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I think they're, oh, sorry.
Sorry, please go for it, Pat.
I think there is an argument to be made, and I'm kind of imagining a very specific fantasy scenario here, and I'm aware of that. And I'm not even saying this as like I've never been in this position before, so I am not experienced enough to like say this. I've been in bad labor situations before, but I saw a lot of like people saying like, how could you do that to your team? Mm-hmm. And I think if you were a contractor getting shit on for years of development of this game with bad conditions, poor pay, bad benefits, and it seemed like everyone who was full-time employees, even the people not at the top of the company, didn't care about you, I can absolutely see why this would feel like just desserts for the team that I can see how you would feel that way. I'm not saying that it's necessarily like the correct response, and I'm not necessarily defending it were that to have been what happened. However, I think a lot of the like, how could you do this to your team thing is like, maybe you should keep in mind that the people that are contractors and that work at the, like, there's a lot of people, and this is myself included, the company I work for, who are kind of in the middle of the chain of responsibility and compensation, who think of themselves as the people who are like maybe dealing with like challenging work environments. If that's how you feel, there's people below you that are feeling a lot worse. And I've never really worked somewhere where the people that are at my level are like, I'm going to go out of my way to try to improve your working conditions to the people that are dealing with worse conditions. So I think this whole like the team thing is great. If I would never screw over the people that are on my team, but like if someone who is dealing with a shitty situation were to screw me over, I would completely understand why. Because it's not like I'm going into my boss's office and saying we need to improve these people's conditions. So and there's reasons for that. Like it's all very complicated and nuanced and complex. But I don't think it's fair to level at someone. And again, this doesn't even sound like it's what happened, but I don't think it's fair to say, wow, you ruined the work that years of people's lives went into to someone who's been just getting like treated like crap for years. Like, sorry that that's the case. This person and a lot of the people around them have not been, it's not just that they've been working hard. They've been working hard for nothing, like compensation wise, just because they're passionate about it. So I don't know. It's a very complicated thing.
I'll try to keep this short so we don't talk about it forever, but like,
yeah.
I see where you're coming from, but I have also been a contractor who's worked for technology companies and gaming companies both, and who has been screwed. The thing is, like, yeah, I'd love to talk about some of those experiences, but I'm still under NDA for several of those. And I imagine Naughty Dog is a big enough company that the contractor agreements that they sign also pretty heavy NDAs. So to Andre's point earlier, they could get hella fucking sued. Like totally not like because not only is that shitty to the team, like that's not something you can sue someone for, but like that is a breach of contract, which is a signed agreement. So both on a personal level, like, no, I don't want to screw over the teams I've worked with and, you know, speak out about stuff that was crappy for some of the experiences I've gone through as a contracted programmer, etc. Like it is actually a legal issue as well. So,
and there's no real like arguments about that. It just is. So for sure.
Yeah. And to one of the follow-ups that we didn't really clarify talking here was that Sony came out and said that they identified who the leaker was and that they're
no connection to Naughty Dog or
not associated with Sony nor Naughty Dog. So
which is largely why my hypotheticals are said without tons of like emotion or behind them because like it's not what happened anyway.
Yeah. And I see where you're coming from with it.
That was the discourse.
It was. And I just think the moralizing of how could you do this to your team? It came from a place to me of, it sounds like you've never been screwed over by a large group of people before. Like in a work
how
environment,
could the team do XYZ to you or to them in the first place that would warrant that?
Exactly.
Kind of...
I think it just sort of removed the from the hypothetical worker who did this. It removed a lot of the consideration of like, maybe the team has been bad to this person.
Yeah.
Like self-sacrifice is not, you shouldn't have to self-sacrifice like, and for your employer in the way that like, some places ask you to.
Yeah. And a lot of the stuff you're saying, Pat, about how contract workers and whatnot are often treated as if they're not part of the team or whatever has been kind of shown in, I believe, some of Jason Schreier's work about like crunch in the industry, like direct, like talking about specific studios and relationships with like agencies that supply contract workers.
And I'm not even saying that you should feel this way if you're in this situation, that you should want to leak a game. That's not my point. It's just, I think we should try to maintain compassion for all of the parts of this, the people involved in this, because like they leaked a game. They didn't like kill someone, you know, and some of the ways that people were talking about the leaker, it was like, whoa, you need to pump your brakes. Like I'm pretty spoiler conscious.
To our conversation earlier about being spoiler conscious.
Yeah, and I'm one of those people, but I'm not gonna like call for someone's head. I don't want this person to go to jail forever, you know. Like
I think Naughty Dog put a little bit of gas on that fire too with the statement they put out. Like they were like, oh, we know that it's been rough with having the spoiler come out in the middle of a pandemic, and it's like that was a little tone deaf Naughty Dog.
Totally. Yeah, that's my feeling. I definitely feel for the people on the team. There were some people that I saw in development who I have a lot of respect for, talking about how they were like weeping for the team to have their work spoiled. And it's like, on the one hand, I get it, but on the other hand, let's have a little bit of perspective. Like,
right. Like it's frustrating. It might be frustrating if you're working on a team like that, but at the same time, like, you know, getting spoilers leaked about your game is like not a tragedy, especially when we have a lot of kind of other tragedies happening right now.
And that's kind of been my feeling about a lot of this stuff. A lot of what I see from even people that I have a lot of respect for on Twitter during this whole thing is like, it's very clear that a lot of people's perspective is a little warped.
And you can definitely feel sad, especially if you're on the team and you're like, well, I don't know how this is going to affect things. I don't want this to happen. But at the same time, like, you can also feel sad with some measure of perspective.
I have been working on a project for the company that I work for since I started there that has been delayed and screwed up and pushed and fucked up countless times. And it's frustrating every time. And that's not even nearly as deep of a creative endeavor as making a video game. So I understand you're totally in the right. Like, everyone has a right to feel whatever they feel about events. It's just like, I don't know that, like, I don't posting to Twitter that I feel so sorry for this. It's like, can just maybe privately have those conversations because there's a lot going on right now. And it's kind of rough out there. And also we will obviously not get into anything in the leaks. I was kind of reading into the leaks a little bit because I don't care about spoilers for that game. I'm respect that other people do, but I'm going to listen to all the spoiler casts without playing it. It's going to be very interesting to hear the discourse about that game, I think.
I have maybe seen a few spoilers, but I don't know how legit they are or anything. Like,
I watched one of the leaked cutscenes and was like, whoa. So that's all I'll say is whoa.
Yeah.
I'll say
now
whoa.
Maybe I have to go watch some of those.
I am certainly not going to purchase that game, but I wasn't planning on it anyway. So,
well, I know one game you might plan on purchasing, but not until for like 5 more years until you finish at least the current one that you never beat. Assassin's Creed.
I haven't even finished Origins.
See, well, that's what I meant because that's the
current one is Odyssey.
Well, but you're not going to touch Odyssey. Maybe you will. I don't know.
I bought it the other day. Okay. It was on sale on Steam.
But yeah,
Odyssey is a good game.
Are those games on Stadia?
Yes.
Does anyone know?
Odyssey is, I think. Origins, I don't think so.
That was the test game. Was Odyssey?
Yeah, I think Odyssey was.
And the new one is
leaked by Jason Schreier like 5 years ago.
Yeah,
Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
I can't believe Jason Schreier would ruin their years of work.
That discourse has happened, especially around Fallout 4. But Assassin's Creed Valhalla, it's a long rumored Viking.
Someday they'll get to feudal Japan.
Someday.
Oh my god! Yeah.
What I think is cool though is like so back when like 3. I think it was, and even as far back as the first one, because I played the first one when it came out and was like, this is the coolest game that anyone has ever made. I still love that franchise. I think I don't have quite the same. I don't think the first one is quite as amazing as I thought it was when I first played it, but I do like that franchise a lot. But even as far back as the first game, people were like, oh, this means that they can do Egypt and they can do feudal Japan and they can do China and they can do the Revolutionary War and they could do medieval Europe. And they actually have done a pretty good job of hitting a lot of the places that you were hoping for them to hit. Like feudal Japan is still on the books. They still need to do that one. But I think they've done a pretty awesome job of like keeping it fresh and moving a lot between different regions.
The thing is, I was talking with Cheska about this because she's a long time Assassin's Creed fan as well, but her and her friends who are deep into it are really bummed about this game because they think it's not like Assassin's Creed anymore, which but my response to that was like, because they kind of see it like, oh, now it's just this kind of RPG that has nothing to do with the original story. And I'm like, but I was like, but you probably should not point your finger at this game and probably point that at like Origins and Odyssey, because that's where that change started happening.
Yeah.
I'm just
glad, also they haven't shown any gameplay yet.
Yeah. I'm just personally glad that we have a AAA franchise that lets you explore parts of history that otherwise would not get games.
Oh yeah, like, and that's one of the things I think I like best about it is just like the feeling of being able to explore various times and things in history.
Granted, we do have God of War recently, and like Vikings have kind
famously
of become
historical game.
To be honest, I've had Viking fatigue.
Yeah, like there's been the Vikings TV shows and like How to Train Your Dragons and all that in the recent 5 to 10 years. But I still love that Assassin's Creed is doing this and giving us big games in eras we wouldn't otherwise get games for.
Well, and not to there's lots of people that feel the way that Cheska does, and I certainly don't mean to dismiss that feeling, because I think it's totally valid. But in my opinion, they very much hit their apex with what they can do with that sort of assassin-y formula with Syndicate. I think Syndicate was like the perfect. I mean,
it was the game.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and it's the culmination of everything that series had been doing to that point. And so, to a degree, I was super excited about the switch with Origins to we're just making The Witcher but historical now with weird shit also, because I just think that that's a more sustainable. And other people disagree, of course, but I would play a open world RPG with a new set of zones to explore and loot to get every few years based on a different historical setting. That's like a dream come true to me. And the reason, and I can't tell you why I haven't finished Origins and Odyssey, because I love what I have played of Origins. I played like 10 hours of it and it was super cool. And it's just a big game that I keep not being able to commit to, I guess.
That's the same thing with Odyssey for me, where I really love what I've played of Odyssey, and I played a decent amount of it. But there's just so much in that game that it's almost overwhelming how much there is.
And to her point, that is different than original Assassin's Creed 1, 2, Brotherhood, etc., Syndicate, like all that is. So I totally see both sides. And I think everything is valid there.
It might be interesting if they tried, like, I don't know if they'd want to release multiple kinds of Assassin's Creed games, or if they want to have kind of more of a unified kind of brand. But it'd be kind of interesting if they're like, okay, here's our open world Assassin's Creed games, but here's our more kind of directed things, like
the Tom Clancy-ification of Assassin's Creed.
Like, because I do know that there are a lot of people who really love kind of the earlier games in the series, and I think that's justifiable, because I love Syndicate especially, but also really loved 2 back in the day. But also, I think it's interesting, some of the new stuff that they're doing. So it's just trying to, I don't know, balance those two kind of both valid feelings about Assassin's Creed as a series.
Yeah, and I think they kind of tried that before when they did the side series of the like side scrolling games, which were actually pretty good.
They were pretty good, yeah.
But I would definitely be interested to see them sort of try it again for sure. I think a lot of this too, I suspect we'll probably get, whether it's the feudal Japan game or something set in India or wherever, we'll get another one of these big open world games after Valhalla. And then I think they're definitely going to play a card at some point that's like, we're going back to our roots. And you're going to get that shift back to that style of game.
Like, to be fair, like, I think in one sense, I 100% agree with the old games are not like this, or the new games are not like the old games, in that I don't think Vikings can be particularly stealthy.
Oh, I don't think this is going to be a stealth game. But it also, I think narratively, I'm one of the, even among Assassin's Creed fans, I'm one of the few people that finds the meta narrative interesting. Like,
sure,
for example, that Assassin's Creed movie is not good. However, I think it's awesome that it's part of the lore and like confirmed as canon with the games, and like, because like the stuff it adds to the lore is really interesting, even though the movie itself is bad. So anyway, like, because of all that, I think they've done a very good job of making it fit with these different pieces of history. Like, no, and a Viking's not going to be super stealthy, and based on the art of the character, he is a big lad.
Also a lady. You can play as a lady.
Oh, that's great. That's good to hear, because I would much prefer to play as a lady.
And it's not like a brother-sister thing. It's just your character is either this guy or it's this girl.
That's cool.
And they're basically the same person, but gender
that's awesome. Because I would much rather play as Viking lady anyway. And I don't know I haven't played much of Odyssey, but it does not seem like they even needed to include the male option. No offense to the guy who voiced him, because he seems very good. But
I mean, it's the whole Shepard FemShep thing where you're like, one is obviously better.
Which is funny to me because I never liked FemShep in the Mass Effect games.
What?
But the further distance I get from Mass Effect, the more I'm like, maybe I just don't like Mass Effect.
Jennifer,
that's another.
FemShep is better as like
as a renegade.
Yeah.
And maybe 100%. That's it. I always played those as Paragon games.
I played those as Paragon too, but I was like, I don't know.
I mean, again, no disrespect to the performances from the people who played these characters, because they're great, but I don't know.
But yeah, in Odyssey, Cassandra is the greatest. So.
She just seems like the deep,
she just rolls in general.
I haven't started it yet, but when I do play Odyssey, I'm not even interested in entertaining.
Like Cassandra is honestly, one of the big things that makes me want to get back into the game and actually finish it, is because she just rules. Yeah. So
hearing about some of the story stuff in that game is just wild.
Yeah, I'm excited to go through them. I still managed to avoid a lot of the spoilers. I know the one early spoiler, but that's fine. I didn't care about it. Wasn't a problem for me. But yeah, I'm excited to get through Origins, and the way that I get the motivation to play through them when a new one gets announced.
Mm-hmm.
And while Odyssey for some reason didn't do that for me with Origins, when Origins was announced, I played like 4 of those games that I had skipped. So I think I can do it.
Unfortunately, Pat, I have some good news and some bad news for you that is going to make it difficult to play those Assassin's Creed games, because your time is going to be taken up by Star Wars Battlefront from 2004, because they gave it a patch. They patched in online multiplayer.
This is so poorly timed. Like, it's cool, but also they're releasing the final patch for Battlefront 2, like the final update, content update, the new Battlefront 2, and that's fine because it's about as complete as it can be without going off in like very specific. Like, they were never going to put Sabine Wren in that game. Should they? Totally. Would they? No. So it's fine because it's a complete experience now. But if the player base disappears for Battlefront 2, then it loses a lot of its luster. And if the player base disappears to go play the original Battlefront, which probably unlikely, but like
very funny.
But like, come on, couldn't you have waited to see if people still play Battlefront 2? Because I'd like to be able to play Battlefront 2 in like 6 months when I get the itch. And if there's no one playing it,
play Star Wars Battlefront. How many people must be playing that game for them to even bother doing that? Look. Because that is a bizarre choice. The fact that it didn't already have it also is a little weird to me. But.
So like, there were in January. Let's see. This is after the news. Thursday, April 30th, Steam Charts has 55 people playing Star Wars Battlefront on Steam.
Wow. Well, it doesn't have multiplayer, so that's fair.
It now currently has 357 people playing it.
All right. Well, those
so
people
it's a
can
huge
enjoy
jump.
Online multiplayer.
I mean, that game was fun. I'm not going to lie. That was a cool game. If they really want to do it right, though, they should add multiplayer to Battlefront 2. The old Battlefront 2, because that game was fire.
All right. Well, speaking of, I don't know. I don't got a segue for that.
It is kind of a fire.
Yeah, kind of, a little bit. Yeah, it's not a great situation.
Yeah.
Indivisible came out on Switch.
Yay!
Unbeknownst to the developers, Lab Zero.
Oh, yeah. This is weird.
That was really weird to see.
The port house apparently just didn't communicate that it was going up on Switch.
My understanding is that it was a 505 thing.
The thing is, if you looked at 505's website, it wasn't anywhere on there either. So no one really knows what happened here.
Huh. 505 seems like a bad publisher.
A lot of their games
Yeah.
are kind of rough when like the ports can be kind of rough.
I mean, like, yeah. Because didn't they handle Control also?
Yeah, and some other things.
And that game was rough. And Bloodstained was really rough.
They're no Iron Galaxy, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Apparently, it was like an old version of the game.
Yeah.
It was like missing, not like fully updated with like features, New Game Plus, that kind of stuff.
That's so weird.
Yeah, apparently it has performance issues, and
it's frustrating because that would be, I didn't super enjoy that game, but it would be a great Switch game. And it's like, it's a cool game. I think it has an audience for sure that it's well deserves. So, it's weird.
It's a
and
weird
sucks.
situation.
It seems like they're
extremely weird.
Publicly, Lab Zero is pretty like, this is really stupid, isn't it? They're not like,
they're laughing. They're laughing about
just
it.
Being like, hey, this is, here's the deal.
I saw
if you want to buy it, just know
one of their
do it.
developers holding up a Switch with the game on it and like grinning at the camera and pointing at it.
Like
that
kind of looked like a shrug almost.
Yeah, that's where I learned about it, was that post. He's like, hey, apparently our game is out on Switch today.
And they're a cool team,
know.
So,
like there was and they're like
surprise.
They're kind of an international team, so they have people all over. And there was one person's like, I just woke up and I am learning about this now.
It's very funny.
Yeah, it's very weird.
And speaking of international,
good one.
Dota 2, the international, has been delayed, likely until 2021. Does that mean we get 2 internationals?
Yeah, I don't know. I think this is kind of like the GDC situation.
Yeah, I think
supposed to be in. Wasn't this one supposed to be in Europe?
This was supposed to be in Berlin.
Yeah, I think it was Berlin. I can't remember exactly, but yeah.
Because last year was
China.
Shanghai, right? Or was it Beijing? And it was in Shanghai.
Mr. Gorbachev.
It was Shanghai, and then it was
down
Vancouver.
This ancient.
No, that broke my brain.
I think it's good. I think that's what they should do.
It's necessary, I think. Especially if it was in
Ich bin ein Shadow Lancer.
Oh my god.
I gotta look and see where it was supposed to be. Because it's somewhat relevant. Oh no. It was gonna be in Stockholm.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah,
that you're
sucks.
right.
I hope it's in Stockholm in
I
2021.
forgot about that. Yes, it was. They had that trailer and everything, right?
Yeah. Because Stockholm that would be a cool place for them to have it, and there's so many players from
a lot of Swedish players. And teams,
So I hope that they still have it there in 2021. Right. I was thinking it was in Germany, and Germany has had some uneven responses to the pandemic. So my thinking was like even better to cancel it. But
I wasted all these great Berlin jokes.
My understanding is that they're doing like the qualifications from this year will carry over, basically, I think. So it's like
the Pokemon World Tour.
Yeah, it's a similar thing to that. I think that's what I read, but who knows how they'll actually end up handling it.
That's weird, because like Dota can change so much in a year.
And so
for sure.
Yeah. So the idea that qualifications could carry over, like you could do it online. Like you've got to deal with like latency and stuff, but like you can make it work. You can do it.
You could play baseball.
Evo's going to be online.
You could play baseball in an empty stadium. Like
Evo's doing it online.
Yeah, I personally I would be
up, but
I would be
new story.
I think it would be great if they did a big online tournament and had the same casters for fun. To me, maybe it's just because I have so much reverence for the event. I don't think you should call it the International unless you can do it the way that the International is done. Personally,
the purist
doesn't have the weight to me if it's online. There's
some of these players will never get another chance, and you're telling them no, you can't do it.
I think it's so. I don't even have a problem with doing it online and saying, well, this is the best Dota team of the year. Just calling it the International. I don't know. It's carries a certain amount of weight, and there's so much to the event when it comes to playing in person in front of a crowd, specifically because that's not normally how it's done. Most tournaments are like, not most, but a lot of tournaments are done online. And then there are a lot of in-person tournaments also, but they don't have the same kind of like audience that you get at the international. So
most people watch the international. It's their one a year. Like no one watches DreamHack every time or whatever. Like
it's just a different
BTS stuff.
Yeah, it's just a different event. Even if they said like the international from home or something and like called it that and just kind of made it fun, that'd be cool. But I just don't think you can do it online the way that they really produce it. It would just be such a different event. In the same sense that like baseball specifically, like you can do a Formula One race, I think, without a crowd, and it's largely the same experience to watch. But like if they had the World Series in empty stadiums, that would just feel different. It'd feel
right.
weird.
It would feel weird. Like it wouldn't, you know, you could still have the game, but it would just like the experience would be totally different.
You would have an asterisk, I think, next to your performance, I guess is what I'm saying. Not that I would take anything away from players, but like forever, whether you like it or not, it would be like, oh, they won, but that was the year that they did it.
That was
online.
The weird one.
Yeah, exactly. So I think canceling it is the better play, in my opinion.
I can say that Riot is going to still be hosting a Worlds for 2020, which is their international equivalent.
Yeah.
So
I also think, frankly, Riot probably has better infrastructure to do it online than Valve does.
Probably
because
I mean, they've got
Riot,
tournament servers and stuff, but Valve probably has them too.
Yeah, but Riot has like their own internet.
Valve kind of like, I mean, not really, but Valve has internet infrastructure, data centers.
I know. I don't know. Maybe it's the same thing, but it seems to me that Riot is more poised to, if anything, doing it online for them would be a good test case for a lot of stuff they're currently working on.
I mean, they've got tournament servers and stuff that they use, so it's not like super out there, but
yeah. I don't know. People should go watch the video from the Valorant devs talking about their network infrastructure and like latency and all that stuff. It's super interesting.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for the news section. That went much longer than anticipated. Yes. We only talked about 2 games, 2.5 to 3 games, and then the news, and we're already at 2 hours. What the fuck is wrong with us?
Have fun with 2 hours of Danganronpa.
So this is the end of the regularly scheduled podcast.
Yeah. The one thing I will say before Pat leaves and before, you know, people who don't want to get spoiled leave, please play Danganronpa.
So like
Dragon Grandpa.
Here's the spoiler-free version. There's a reason for the past 2.5 years I've been saying people need to play this game.
And you might think, like, I kind of wondered while I was playing it, oh, you know, am I going to feel like this was overhyped, or like, you know, am I going to be, is it going to be spoiled by the fact that Alex has been hyping this up for so long?
Totally.
No. It is well worth playing extremely. And I recommend, if you like game stories, that is as vague as that is, you should play it.
It raised my standards, is the best way I can put it. Is like the way, because my preferred games, I think you guys know by this point, is stuff that just fucking goes for it. Like stuff that does not follow a formula, stuff that tries new things. And the ending of 3 specifically goes for it in a way and with like so much gusto, and like it's just like nothing I've ever seen before or since, honestly.
Yep. All right. So before I want to wrap things up for those who do not want to be spoiled, and then we can get more into this conversation. First, Pat, where can people find you?
You can find me at PJC Plays, and I think I'm gonna stream something tomorrow morning.
Ooh.
I think it might be some SnowRunner, might be a little bit of Legends of Runeterra, but I think I want to, if I can get up early enough, I think I want to stream tomorrow, because I've had the itch for some streaming.
You can review our podcast at podchaser.com/gamingfix. and we would really appreciate that. It helps us get found and more people listening to us and all that kind of great stuff. There's going to be some reviews going up on the site this week. I've got a few. We've got some guest reviews.
I still would like to review Flower Collectors. I'm not sure exactly when I'll get to it. And same for SnowRunner.
Yep.
I want to put one together for both of those.
And that site is
fix.space. You can find us on Twitter at Fix Podcasts. And that's...
Have fun. I think I am going to... I still have some Steam bucks. They're like 100 Steam bucks from my birthday. And the Danganronpa complete collection is only like $24. So
that's a good price.
That
I can play it.
Honestly, that is like an extremely good deal considering how much you get from these.
I would still prefer to play it on a mobile device, but knowing that I could just kind of wheel this recumbent bike over to the desk and put some headphones on and play with a controller, that is enough for me, I think. So
also, they're like a trial in that game can be like 3 hours.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Be careful with
playing that on mobile would be maybe
totally. Yeah, that makes sense.
And there is like an intermission usually.
There were a couple of times where I was playing. I was like, "Oh, I'll just finish this chapter tonight before I go to bed," and it's like going to, and then it's like 1:30, and I'm like, "What happened?"
Yeah. And now that Runeterra is out on mobile, it's not like I need something to play on my iPad because I can just play that before I go to bed or whatever. Not that you should look at screens while you're laying in bed. You really shouldn't. It's a bad habit. The bad habit that I do.
A bad habit that I
do as I say, not as I do. Say
exactly.
Yeah.
You should not use your preparing to sleep times to play an expedition for an hour in Legend of Runeterra.
You should not.
I also did do that last night.
You should probably not play a murder trial in Danganronpa but right before bed because that's what I've been doing.
Hype you the fuck up.
I like to read and play fucked up stuff before I go to sleep all the time.
Sometimes I fall asleep listening to true crime podcasts.
Totally,
so
yeah. I used to fall asleep to horror movies all the time. That was my favorite way to go to sleep. Anyway, I will leave you all to your discussion. I look forward to listening to it once I play through those games.
I look forward to hearing
another spoiler cast.
Yeah.
I look forward to hearing your thoughts because and now this is one of those games where I'm like, I want to hear what everybody has to say about it.
See, at this point, now you know my pain.
And not like, I still don't know that I'm going to come away with the same feelings that all of you have for it, because it's a genre that I typically don't enjoy. I don't like the art style that much, and the little bit of the writing that I've encountered I don't like, but I also kind of feel like I have to see it now because of all the stuff that the three of you, not everyone, says about it. It's also one of those things that's fascinating to me because I have never heard anyone else say, like, I never hear people talk about this series at all outside of the three of you. However, the three of you love it, whose opinions I respect and appreciate more than 99% of people. And it's like super highly reviewed by users on like every platform.
Yeah, so, I think it's one of those series where people who love Danganronpa really love
Which I just like to experience that stuff even if I don't come away loving it. So, yeah.
All right, let's do this.
With that, I'll leave you all. Have
all right.
fun.
Okay, sweet Jesus. All right, bye, Pat. All right.
All right.
Abandon hope, all ye who enter here.
This is pure spoilers from here on out. So, Allison.
And I cannot stress this enough. If you want to play this game, go in spoiler free. Also, you might think, like, there are a couple of times where I was thinking, I'm like, do I know what's going to happen? Like, you start kind of like looking at some of the things and you're kind of like, I kind of wonder about this, but then it completely exceeded everything I was thinking.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, though. You need to play Danganronpa 1 and 2 for the full effect.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
You're looking 100%. At like 90 hours a game here.
I'm so glad that I played 1 and 2 because...
Yeah. And I think you could get away without playing them, but the whole last chapter will not have the same impact.
No. And then the last chapter, you're just like,
So...
But...
I think this game starts, like, this is a spoiler we didn't even really talk about, but the first thing that happens in that game is you start as a different protagonist than the one you end with.
Yeah.
Well, even before that, if I'm remembering correctly, you start and everyone's just like, I'm a normal kid but then they're like, oh wait, we fucked up, restart, and then
Yeah.
everyone gets like transformed into
with
their
the
ultimate
flashlight.
selves.
Yeah.
Right, which you don't necessarily realize all the implications until the end, and
Until
you're
much
just like,
later, yes.
oh, because it's one of those things where I'm like, this is going to come back somewhere, but you have so many hours of game in between the start and then the end that you kind of like don't think about it for a while, and then it just comes back and hits you, and you're
And it's like, oh yeah, this was planned from minute 1.
yeah, like no, they've been planning this for the whole game.
Yeah. That game is fucked up, and I think it is the most consistent of the 3 games. Like every trial moves the whole story forward in a better way and has like implications for the world and like the characters there like within, like a little bit better than the previous 2 in my opinion. I don't know if you feel about that, having done them all back to back.
Yeah. I remember feeling kind of similar when I played it 2 years ago now or something.
Yeah.
It's like there was a lot of times where I'm like, I want to know what's going on with the story, but it's like it kind of like drags things out. Whereas I feel like the mystery is a lot more like you're more active in trying to figure stuff out, at least earlier on, it feels like.
Yeah.
Maybe that's because you're the ultimate detective.
And also like the stuff they open up as you're able to explore, like I found more interesting in this game than the others, like especially when you get the casino. Like that part was just silly.
I was just like,
Yeah.
what?
So, yeah, it never really comes. It's just like a shop kind of spot. Nothing really important happens there. But
Yeah.
So yeah, we briefly alluded to it. So the beginning of this game kind of throws away convention.
Mm-hmm.
From the get-go.
You're playing at I can't
Kaede.
remember character names.
Kaede.
The ultimate piano player, ultimate musician. And you go through this whole first chapter playing as Kaede, and
I was like, man, Kaede is a fun protagonist. I sure love playing as her.
it's a departure. Is like you played as boys in the first 2 games. You get halfway through the first murder trial.
Kaede's fun. She's a fun character, and then halfway through,
she lines up with the protagonist of the previous game. Like she's the one that's trying to kind of get everybody together and be like, hey guys, we can make it through this. Like, yeah.
You get halfway through this first murder trial, and then it goes, hey, you're going to switch characters now.
You're switching protagonists.
This emo detective boy, you're him now.
And
who is his love? Who is her love interest?
Yeah, they are very tightly intertwined.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's very much in the middle of the like trial. So it took me a brief moment to realize, wait, we're like there's like a weird, it doesn't explicitly tell you like you are now playing as Shuichi. You're like, it's like
it just
kind
happens.
of it just happens, and you're just like, what?
And because the way they reveal kind of why and what happened while you were, spoilers, it turns out Kaede is the murderer in this first case.
Right.
Or is she? We'll get back to that. But it's set up as Kaede is the murderer, and she would, all these things you're doing in the investigation, like you're like, oh, I'm going to organize all these books, and that's like, there's like a secret plan there, and oh, I'm just going to pick up this this shot put ball, and like. Yeah. Which is like, okay, I'm investigating. I pick up things all the time, whatever.
Well, and the cool part about that is like, I didn't like run into a point where I like, sometimes in the investigations, if you don't investigate something that you need to, they'll be like, I'm sure I should wait here, or I should keep investigating. But like with those in particular, I was just like messing around. So I didn't really necessarily think about it. I was like, oh, I'm waiting. I'm just going to like look at all these objects in here. I'll look at the shot put balls. And then, I just organize these books. That's a little bit weird. But like, you don't really think about the implications of it because you're just so used to looking at everything in the game that you're just like, oh, I was actually like weirdly complicit.
like the game encourages you to do it with the hidden Monokumas and stuff. It's like, hey, go and explore this world, go interact with stuff, poke around, see what happens, and like they give you the X-ray vision to make it even more easy. So it's like, yeah, just do all this stuff and
click
then
on everything.
Exactly.
Get the flavor text. Get the
yeah. But the way they subvert all those expectations in the first trial is really good. And we don't really need to talk about every trial because we'll be here for 5 hours.
Right. But I do think that it was an interesting twist. And it was like, this is the start of the game.
And it gets more wild from there.
And it gets more wild. And it's, I feel like that's kind of one of the things that's so interesting about Danganronpa as a series is that they kind of pull out all of the like big end series twists and they just throw them in throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like the ending of Danganronpa 1 where it's like, oh, actually the whole world's kind of destroyed. It's like, that feels like a bigger twist than like the first game in the series. And it's like, I don't know if they knew if this would be a series or not, but it's still very big. Whereas, and then this end of Danganronpa 2 where it's like, oh, this is actually all a virtual world. It's like, that's a pretty big twist. Where do you go from that? And then the answer is Danganronpa 3, where you start out the game and then it's switching protagonists. And
my understanding is the creator thought the exact same thing as you were just saying, Allison.
Yeah.
What the fuck do I do? You want another game? I got shit.
I think the ending of this game is very much him going out there and saying like, we don't want to run this series to the ground. Like we know that we're going to hit our peak, so let's make this very definitively the last game. And like if we were to make another one, it's either not for a very long time, not for like it has to be a very good reason, or like I don't even know. Like
well, right, because I've been so into the like spending so much time with these games over the past couple of weeks. Like I've played multiple hours every single day, and I really grew to love this series. But I was thinking about it and I'm like, I'd feel weird hoping for another game in the series because I feel like it very specifically is like, maybe don't? Like, I don't know. Yeah.
So to get into that, the final trial.
Which was wild to experience.
In general.
The final where it's like, it's starting to like seed these doubts. Like Kibo starts having these doubts and like it's just.
Kibo's gone like haywire.
He's destroying the entire thing.
You're investigating. And so one of the key moments, there are a few key moments in this investigation. One of them is everyone in this game is an ultimate student, but you don't know what the first murder victim, you don't know their talent. And the entire game, that's kind of kept a mystery and teased at. And Monokuma's like, oh man, if only you knew what his talent was, it would have been handy.
Yeah, and then you find his ultimate, each of the students in the third game has like their own ultimate lab, which is basically like, here is where theoretically in the world of Danganronpa, like you would be honing your talent. So for like example, for Kaede's, there's like a piano and a bunch of music and stuff, but really it's mostly so that you can get props to murder people. But they specifically were like, oh, well, his lab you can't get into because he was murdered already. Whoops.
But eventually, because Kibo, which
a robot?
I want to come back to, Kibo, the ultimate robot. With flashlight eyes and tape deck and
oh my gosh, I love Kibo.
So you get into his lab and you find some videos where it's the guy and he's talking to presumably message for himself, which did not get delivered, and he reveals, hey, this is not your first killing game. You wanted to be here for whatever reason.
You won the last one.
Yes, you won the last one. So here, and you've got some perks. Do what you have to. I think don't let this continue, or basically this is not their first rodeo.
And also, like,
it was their last.
Very specifically, like, you wanted this, like, which was a very specific thing to want to be a part of a killing game.
But the thing that is weird about this is when he he says, this is not your first killing game. You won the last one. The last game, Danganronpa 2, this character was not in that game.
Right. And you start like kind
Nor
of
were they
wondering,
in the anime Danganronpa 3.
Nope.
You start kind of wondering, like, is this actually another character that I already know, but was disguised somehow? Like,
The ultimate disguise artist was in Danganronpa 2.
But like I started, which is interesting because he was disguising himself as a character from Danganronpa 1.
Yeah.
Which, but you start, I started mentally going like, okay, what character could he kind of look like? And like going through my brain of like all the characters in the previous games. But then it's revealed that killing games that we've seen in the games and also in the other media, which now I'm kind of like, do I need to go find and watch the animes now? But that they're not the only ones.
Yeah. Because there is a reason Danganronpa V3 is what it is, because this is the 53rd Danganronpa killing game.
Where I was just like, I thought it was such like a stylistic choice to be like, oh, V3, like version 3.
There have been moments in our conversations where I've been like, no, not Danganronpa, but Danganronpa V3.
V3. And I was like, it's not a stylistic choice. It's like...
Yes, so you get...
That like blew my mind more than a lot of things.
Junko Enoshima, the 53rd.
Who was Tsumugi, who was like... For a while, I kept talking about how much I liked her with you guys, and I want you guys just kind of like...
don't worry.
I messaged Alex. I was like...
I was like, oh, she's so adorable. She's the ultimate cosplayer, which in hindsight is like it's such a cool, ultimate skill for her to have, because as you find out, these Danganronpa games, including this one, are all produced fictionally. They're explicitly called Danganronpa.
They're a game.
They're a game.
They are a TV show. They are.
Like it basically, like, it uses that as a conceit, but it basically directly talks to the player saying, hey, fuck the fourth wall. Like, not just saying like, oh, we're not saying like, okay, we're breaking the fourth wall. Like, they demolish the fourth wall. They
actively call it out. And then they actively call out that Kibo is like, which I keep wanting to say spoilers when this is a spoiler chat.
Fuck it, go for it.
Where Kibo, they call him like an audience surrogate, and they like directly are like, oh, you're the like, but they directly call out the Danganronpa audience, like both in the game and like both kind of in universe and out of universe. But does that really matter anymore? And I don't know.
Part of me feels that would have worked better if you were playing as Kibo.
I think it made sense with how he always had his inner voice thing going throughout. Like it did make sense.
Yeah. And so the reason Kibo goes wild at the end of the chapter 5 is because he gets bonked on the head by some falling debris and it knocks off his antenna, which is
also kind of a weird subversion too, because it's like the little like hair thingy, that you see in a lot of anime characters' designs, including a lot of Danganronpa character designs.
A lot of them, yes.
Which is like, you just kind of assume, oh, that's just a stylistic choice, but it's actually an antenna. And so it's like further kind of playing with anime tropes.
Yep. But I think my absolute favorite part, and the part that I've been wanting to talk about for 2 years, is how they basically say like it makes you reconsider fiction. And like it makes you look at the characters. They basically actively say like, okay, so what? We're written characters in this game. Like, we're fictional. We're just lines on a page. But all the shit that we went through, like all the suffering we went through, all of this like absolutely terrible stuff was done for people's entertainment. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? We have feelings. What? Like,
right.
Why would you find this entertaining?
I think one of the I haven't looked too much into the discourse surrounding this game since I just finished it last night. But I think that one of the things that I'm assuming people might have issues with this game is that, oh, since it's all fictional, what does it really matter? But it like directly goes into that in the game, where it's like, yeah, it was fictional, and yeah, all of it was. There's a lot of it that was scripted. There's a lot of it where they put storylines in place or they influence characters, but that still matters because it still happened. Like, it doesn't invalidate what it was, even though a lot of people might be like, oh, well, what's the point then if it was all fictional? Then,
which is funny because yes, it's all fiction. It's a game. It is all fictional, but you have this desire to like, no, these people have to actually suffer. The implication is these people are actually dying. Like, it's not like, oh, it's not like a movie and like they fake the deaths and hide the bodies or something. These people are actually dying. And like, kind of how we, you were saying you fall asleep to true crime podcasts or, true crime in general. And
there's a lot of discussion about the implications of, true crime as a genre, as a thing people are into when it's
just consume all this stuff about, this horrible stuff or, just in general, and rely on these characters want these characters to feel pain or whatever for it's release of emotion or
right.
What have you.
And it's even if you're, as the audience, not necessarily into the game for watching people suffer, but you want to witness people overcoming that suffering. Mm-hmm. It actively is like, that's not much better. Or questions, is it better that you're the audience that wants hope to survive in the end, or you want good things to survive, if what that entails means that you keep perpetuating the scenarios that got you that in the first place. Mm-hmm. Like I was thinking about this a lot last night, where a lot of the things that, we as a society consider kind of virtuous come out of troubling times, or come out of terrible scenarios. Like, people talk about like bravery or valor, or they talk about, overcoming things as being very virtuous. But like, if you're perpetuating horrible things to attain those kinds of virtues, is that good? Probably not. Like, why do we have to have suffering in general?
Yeah, it's really fascinating. But like, I love the way that they make it, how it changes everything about the game as well. Like, it starts turning off UI elements. It changes the way you interact with it. Like, it's like I was totally all in at that point when they're like, when Shuichi's going crazy and it's just like, yeah, I'm just not voting. And it's like, it's like, okay. Yeah, Monokuma's like, yeah, well, you're gonna have to play these games, and you're just like, fuck no, put down the controller. I'm not touching this.
I literally put down the controller, and you're just like, because all of the mini games aren't necessarily, the best part of Danganronpa, but you're still, like, I feel like I actively liked I thought the driving one was probably the platonic ideal of what it could be in this one, where it didn't feel bad.
They were fine. They were long, but they were fine.
Yeah, they were fine. But you're like, you have to actively fight your own instincts about playing games, where you see like the timer go down, and you're just like, it'd be so easy to just pick up and press A button and accelerate, but you have to actively make the choice to just do nothing, which is kind of, which was a very interesting experience. And I don't think I've had an experience like that in a game.
Yeah, I think it's the most effective fourth wall break I've ever seen.
Yeah, and then there's a moment where it actively is like, do you want to save this game? And you have to say no.
Yeah. Do you want to remedy the situation?
Yeah.
And the way they eventually kind of put like pit you against the audience in a way, like the in-game audience, but which is also the Danganronpa audience, or just kind of the audience of any media in general. It's like, I gave so much to this thing. You owe me this. That attitude that people have to media in general and creators, and the relationship between like the people, like the actors and things like that, is very interesting.
Yeah.
Right. It's very.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry. Should say it. All the while that's going on, Tsumugi is changing to all these characters that you've been identifying with for 2 previous games.
And there's all these characters that you like adore. And like I think one of the best things about the game is just how all of these games are the characters. Just because I feel like at the start of each game, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I'll like these characters as much as I liked the last game, or they seem a little bit stereotypical, but then that's kind of the point. And that's kind of something that you need to, and you just start like identifying with them. And then all the while Tsumugi is like transforming it to these characters, including like ones you haven't thought about for a long time, like people from the start of Danganronpa 1 or.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And it's just like, my gosh, but it's like directly saying like, hey, like kind of expectations of like, yeah, we supported your game, now you have to do exactly what we want. Like, yeah, that's not great.
And so the implication of the end of Danganronpa 3 is that for the past 2 games, or 5 games if you played Ultra Despair Girls, is you have just been perpetuating this cycle of mass media murder entertainment. Yeah. Where kids who are excited to sign up to be a part of Danganronpa and have their memories erased and either murder or be murdered because the society is so depraved.
And it leans so heavily into, this is Danganronpa. We're going to call it Danganronpa. We're going to have you identify the icon of the developer team Danganronpa.
Yep. Whose logo has been on all 3 or all 5 games.
Yeah. Right. It's like it is going to extremely specifically, and at one point it like replays the opening cutscene or the opening
like
video cinematic. Yeah. And it's like, and you see Team Danganronpa pop up and it's like, this is it's like, this is what it is. It's like, it leans so heavily into like, it doesn't just break the 4th wall, it just completely demolishes and spits on the idea of a 4th wall. Like, but
I think my favorite takeaway from it though is the fact that like it has a positive message at the end. It's like Shuichi's whole like deep dive, and you think he's just going crazy, but then he comes back by saying like, okay, fuck it, we're fictional, so what? I'm gonna change the outside world from this fiction. Like, it's going to be like, well, like, can fiction change the world? Can we like change the way? Can we give this a different ending than people are expecting? And it's like, yeah, we'll show people that we as these fake characters are people you care about, and we're going to make our own choice, which benefits our lives and hopefully other people's lives too.
Yeah, as much as it is kind of critical, I feel like it's also almost kind of celebratory of the power of fiction as well.
Very much so.
Where it's like fiction has like it's like fiction has this power, and it has meaning even if it's not real. It's still significant.
Yeah.
So that's like, which is extremely cool that it just has this kind of 2 dual messages, which like you were mentioning that last night, that people have pretty complicated feelings about Danganronpa 3 are because they kind of perceive it as being really harsh with the fans. But really, I feel like it kind of takes kind of a median, like it takes an approach where it's both critical and also almost loving in a weird way. Totally. Of the concept of fiction that can be so really engrossing.
Well, I think that's kind of the point of having all those characters that Tsumugi's changing to. It's like, yeah, these are characters you have really cared about and you've seen their stories through. Like, even when it shows Sayaka from like the very first victim from the very first game, and like she's saying this kind of stuff, it's like, yeah, you're right. I did feel that 10 years ago. Like, this stuff has permeated, and what seemed from the outside as like a kind of murder porn, like stupid game where it's just like, oh, it's making you suffer, but then you hope for hope and despair, and those words get used over too much, and like, but no, it's a lot more than that, and they don't leave it up for analysis. They're spelling it out in like, like they're really just, like I said, they're going for it. They did, like, that's the thing about Danganronpa is it very explicitly plays by its own rules, like a lot. Like Monokuma will come out and say like, yeah, I don't break my own rules. Like, no one is allowed to break the rules. These rules have been set in stone. Like, as silly and weird and bizarre as it gets, these rules are like gospel. And then this just completely throws them away, like in a very effective way.
Right. And it very specifically, I feel like, is what I was even going to say there. I feel like this game kind of broke me. But yeah, no, it like, even in like the first game, like you're playing to an audience, so there's an element of like we need this to be fair because this is for an audience, but the 3 takes it to like a whole nother level where it's like, it needs to be fair because you're playing the video game, and if it wasn't fair, you would be mad. Like, as the audience, you'd be mad if you didn't play by, if Monokuma didn't play by the rules or anything.
Yes. Yeah, it's fascinating. And
then Monokuma, I was just going to say, Monokuma doesn't play by the rules. The mastermind doesn't play by the rules because they totally fuck with you in the first trial.
Yeah.
Which comes back in the second.
They don't let you know until the
ultimate twist at the beginning ends up being like, no, there's even more to that, because
Kaede thinks she murdered her.
And Monokuma cheated.
Yeah.
Totally. It's fucked up.
And like, I gotta say, like, I think we've talked a lot about this ending being really good, but the rest of the game is really good too. Like, the trial with Gonta, like, that was one of the saddest parts of any game ever.
I was like overwhelmed by how sad I felt, like,
because he's so good.
That's the other thing too, is that like, going into these games, you think, oh, I don't know how attached I want to get to these characters right away, because they are you know, right. Yeah. You know exactly what kind of game this is going to be. So you think, okay, I don't know if I can fully invest myself, but the characters are just so well done that you end up kind of, despite everything, getting super invested by midway through. So then you're just like, you actively are like, no, that character can't die. And then I feel like it, like, occasionally it does, but there's so many times in these cases where the reason for their killing is like kind of understandable. Like with Gonta, you feel like he's trying to do his best. Like, you don't, like, it might have been misguided, it might have been wrong because it is, but at the same time you kind of are like, I kind of get where some of these people are coming from at times.
Like, the weird one about Gonta is that he and Kokichi like kind of colluded together because they saw the outside, right? It's been a few years since I played it. I'm just making sure I'm remembering right. And then like Gonta basically has empathy for everyone else, like all his friends that he's made all this time, and he's like, if they see what the outside is like, they're gonna lose all of their like desire to live. So
All
he's
their
gonna
hope.
Right.
he's he's gonna shoulder all of that burden for their sake.
Right. I want to I want to bear all of this burden and be the only one left so that I can protect them.
Like, that is so sad.
Yeah.
It was really well done. God, I love that game.
It's very good. So we talk about the end. What at the beginning? What are some other highlights for y'all in this game?
The Kaito and Maki relationship in general.
Oh my god, I love those characters so much. Like Maki's character, I feel like in each of these games I have like one character where at the beginning I'm like, I don't know about them, but then I grow to just like them being one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And that was 100% Maki, because her character was so well written and compelling to follow up with, that she goes from being just very standoffish, understandably, and not really a part of anything, to being like a really core part of the team.
For a long time, she's standoffish too, for like the first 2 or 3 trials.
Right, there are a couple of times early on where I was like, hey, I'll try to talk to Maki, sure. Especially since I think you said that you liked her, and I'm like, maybe I'm just not giving her a chance, and then she won't let you talk to her, so you're like, okay.
Maki was one of my favorites, along with Himiko. I think the only I wanted Kaito to make it to the end, but I think his whole situation. I wanted Kaito to make it to the end. I would have preferred him to Kibo. Kibo's great, but I was just like, really like Kaito because he's an astronaut, and astronauts are cool. But
he's very fun, and he's a very kind of I'm trying to figure out the words to describe Kaito.
So if anyone's watched Gurren Lagann, he's basically Kamina. Like, I don't know if either of you have, but he is almost 100% Kamina.
Like he's very earnest and straightforward in a way that's extremely appealing. Like he says what he means. He's positive and forthright, and he's just just very also overly confident, but not in a kind of annoying way. Although some of the characters are annoyed by it, but
he's
like
encouraging.
In a like, oh, I wish I was that positive, Kaito. Like, I wish I had that level of kind of like.
Well, it's because of him that Maki breaks out of her shell.
Mm-hmm. And he actively reaches out to her, and it's very moving how, especially him, Maki, and Shuichi, who you're playing as for the most of the game, like how their kind of friendship grows throughout, and it's very exciting to watch.
And the nice thing about that one is like it kind of feels like we were saying with the first trial and the way they subvert it with like you're kind of naturally exploring the environment. With how you interact with the characters, it feels like the first workout club kind of interactions with them feels kind of natural and almost like a side activity, even though it is core to the story. And like the way they grow that into like, oh, now we're gonna work out every night together and hang out and do these chats and like grow, and like that all felt really natural too. Oh God.
Yep.
Yeah. And then Himiko,
best girl.
Just her character
arc was so good.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how I felt about her at first. She was one of those, but her arc of still being Himiko, but also becoming more motivated and more
Himiko's
taking
arc,
more charge.
Yeah. Himiko's arc like gives the whole fourth wall breaking ending a lot of its emotional weight, because she arguably is one of the ones who went through the most suffering, because people basically died for her sake, and she like seemed ungrateful, like she she was in her shell and like depressed and lazy and all these things, and just like people were trying to connect with her and do things with her and like encourage her, but she didn't hear it until those people died.
And didn't realize just how much people like Tenko meant to her until Tenko was died. Yeah.
And like that whole trial, she's like dead silent up until when she loses it. Like it's just really strong writing.
And I think it was just so interesting how she could have easily just like kind of fallen more into like silence in the future, but her choosing to take on no, I am going to take these lessons I've learned to heart and
live.
Yeah, and live and be the kind of person that they would want me to be. Like it's super. It's like so satisfying too.
Yeah,
that it is.
How about you, Andre? Is there any characters that come to mind? Specifically in 3, I guess. Like other games too, but 3 mostly.
I mean, I've been on record saying Himiko, Maki, Kaito are my favorites. Gonto was good. I'm trying to look at like a big... I think I liked everyone. And I didn't like Kokichi because of his stupid face.
I liked
his
Kokichi.
face got really weird.
I really actually liked Kokichi.
I think he was really interesting, but I don't know if I'd say I like him.
I liked just about everyone.
I will
for the
say,
most part.
What was our anthropologist?
Mask person Mask person wasn't super high on my list.
I think they might have been one of my least favorite from the whole series.
Although that story, like
that trial was.
It was a bit. It was
icky. Very some Resident Evil Code Veronica shit going on.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of that, but everything.
But for the most part, I think the cast of 3 was probably my favorite ensemble.
Yeah.
But I was very happy with the closing, more so than I think with any other game.
Like
in the series.
In the series. I thought you meant any other game ever.
No. Just those final 3, I think they really worked for me.
Yeah. I think the execution is, I would say it, I don't know if it's my any game ever also, but like it did change how I view game stories.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, just like fiction in general, kind of.
Yeah. I feel it's like I said at the start of the podcast, like the feeling where you're playing this game and you realize like, oh, this is going to definitely change how I think about things. And you kind of recognize it while you're playing that. And it's kind of special.
Yeah. Like this is why on episode 2 and 3 of this podcast, I was like, guys, we fucked up. We needed to put this on our game of the year list.
Well, I'm glad we didn't, because you would have had to have made the case, and then we've had this journey where we got to experience it and play it. Totally. And we'll right this wrong someday. We'll
someday we'll have some sort of like retrospective.
The We Were Wrong, relitigate 2017.
Please respect Danganronpa.
Yes. Don't write it off because it is something special.
Yeah.
And speaking of things that are special, this podcast, it has been special. I have enjoyed my time discussing Danganronpa with the two of you.
I'm glad we can finally put this meme to rest.
I know. Thank you guys for waiting for me.
Thank you for finally playing it.
It was so good, and I'm so glad that I ended up playing it because I loved it.
This has been episode 119. Is that where we're at?
Yeah, 119.
119 of the Gaming Fix podcast on May 2nd, 2020. I've been your host, Andre Cole, aka your partner's favorite Final Fantasy. You can find me on Twitter at Coolslaw, COOLSL4W. Allison, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at WRITERSERENYTY.
And Alex?
Breaking fourth walls everywhere.
Hell yeah. You can find us on Twitter once again at Fix Podcast. And please, if you've got it, find the space in your heart to go to podchaser.com/gamingfix and leave us a review. We'd really appreciate it.
Don't despair, have hope.
Or, be filled with despair and talk about that despair in the review. Whatever helps you get through your feelings.
Allison, there's one thing I forgot to mention.
Oh, yes, please.
Okay, I won't make this long. But when Junko first showed up, and I was like, "Oh, are you serious? Is this how they're gonna end it? Fuck!"
I know, me too. I definitely had that feeling of like, I'm like, oh, I guess it's Junko again. Okay.
That's how I felt at the end of 2, but then at 3, I was like, well, of course.
Yeah. Anyways, sorry, we don't have to go
Yep.
deep into that.
Yep. No, it's okay. Anyway, thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll be back with another podcast. We'll talk about the Xbox, probably some Assassin's Creed. Who knows what else?
We'll talk about stuff.
We'll talk about stuff next week. There's games. Who knows? I'll play more Final Fantasy VII. I wonder if I'll fall off after I get past the part I'm at. Who knows? Only time will tell. Thanks for joining me.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.